drums, an instrument everybody loves.
Yes, family. Good evening, everyone. How's everyone doing? Thanks for tuning in. Welcome to another live stream with your boy Wyatt Matters, or Wim for short, whichever one you prefer. I don't mind. Hope everyone is doing well. Hope everyone is good this evening. So before we begin, I'm just gonna say what's up to the chat. I can see a few people already in here, which I appreciate, and all that good stuff. Skills man, as you already know, welcome. And yes, please, everyone. I always forget to do this myself because it's just not second nature still. But please make sure if you come in, can you like the stream, share the stream, subscribe if you are new. Hoping to have a good conversation today. So Skills man reloaded. Hope you are doing well. KB Jones, how's it going, my brother? Hope everything's all good. Hope you and the family as well. The kid doing all good. Hope everyone's all right. Mr. Pelu, welcome. R&B, welcome. I mean, well, it could do. I mean, a lot of these tropes that people talk about millennials, it could apply to Gen Z too. So, yeah, it definitely could be the case. Could be the case. Controversial but true. Welcome. How's it going? Hope you're doing well. Anan, also welcome. Glad to have you here. I can see a few people from the Discord server here, so very glad that you can make it. Hope that you can stay. Hope that you can provide. Well, I can know you can come up. I'm gonna not speak for too long because I want to get some interaction. I don't want to labor for you too long. I've not been really had any panels for the last couple of live streams, so I'm conscious that people are itching to have their say so on quite a few things that I've been talking about. But hopefully, this one should be a nice one. I'm hoping for my millennials to pull up, have their say, and give their point of view. Jesse, how's it going? Always a pleasure. Hope you're doing well. All that good stuff. So, the live stream, the title of the live stream, the Millennials Fallacy. We are nothing but entitled, spoiled, narcissistic snowflakes. We whine, we complain. We don't know what when we're born. We have life too easy. These are all the tropes that I'm pretty sure any millennial, and the age range for millennials is between, this is not my numbers, between 1981 to the year 2000. So if you're born between 1981 and the year 2000, you are technically classed as a millennial. So I know some people who are on the Shaw page are like, is that right? Is that right? I think it's 1980. I think it's 2000. I think someone said 1995, but it's definitely between it's definitely between 81 and 2000. I was always told, but we all know who the millennials are. We know where that is, and every single time, I don't know how it comes up, but whenever there's some issues that take place and it's regarding us millennials, the first tropes or the first series of tropes that always get leveled at us is that we're just all these horrible individuals who just lazy, don't know how we're born, and all that other kind of stuff. Is that right? I mean, listen, all right, fine. 1997 Gen Z. All right, cool. I give it to you. I give it to you. So between 81 and 97, fine. All right, boom. Easy. But what kind of kills me the most, and this is where I need to do a bit of a pushback on this conversation, because do you know what kills me the most? There are a lot of conversations that doesn't get spoken enough in regards to our plight. Now, I'm not going to be here to try and spin you this woe is me, woe is us situation, but there has to be things that needs to be said from our side, and this is why I'm going to open the chat very soon. I'm not going to speak for too long. I got a few things I want to say because a few things which, in my opinion, again, this is my opinion. People have different viewpoints. That we've been shafted as millennials. We have been completely led astray, and there are things outside of our control, which I'm going to get into. Which is the reason why we come across as these moany, whiny kids who, they call it adulting. We don't want to grow up. The Peter Pan syndrome. All these books, all these literatures, all these pieces are pretty much been nothing but just criticizing millennials, criticizing everything about millennials is bad. And it's all by the baby boomers. And what's so interesting is this: most millennials are born to baby boomers. So the baby boomers were the first generation after the war. So after the Second World War, that's why they call it the baby boomers, because the baby boom. They had to repopulate after a lot of, unfortunately, lost lives, soldiers, civilians. So this is why the baby boomers term was coined, because there's a massive surplus of kids. And then the children of the baby boomers are mostly the millennials. So this is where you have two big groups, almost two big warring groups: the baby boomers and then the millennials, because pretty much the millennials are the children of the baby boomers in most of effect. And anyway, so all of a sudden, it's like, oh my days, we're the worst thing since sliced bread, even though these baby boomers are the ones who reared us in the first place. But anyway, that's a completely another conversation. But let's point to, again, when I talk about what really goes on, what's really took place, and why I think again we have been we've been dealt a hard hand in certain key aspects, which for some odd reason gets overlooked. And what I want to show you now is, because I think you've all heard of this, I'm going to share my screen. And this is why I say we complain the way that we do, because I posted something on my community tab. I don't know how many people caught it. I know KB, Skittles Man, you guys definitely saw this, but I'm going to share my screen. I'm just going to let you in on a few things as to, because listen, again, I don't want to be this woe is me thing. I don't like that kind of stuff. I do think a lot of it can be a little bit of victimization, which there are stats to prove these things as opposed to just complaining. And this is one of the things I posted on my community tab. And it reads like this. As of 2014, millennial households were earning 14% less than baby boomers, were at a comparable age, and 11% less than Generation X. By 2016, the net worth of millennials was 20% behind that of baby boomers, and at a comparable age, 40% behind Gen Xers. So, as you can tell, the baby boomers, they've been criticized, if you like, for almost stealing the wealth. So, when we talk about the wealth transfer, a lot of people, and there's a lot of stats supporting this and evidence that the baby boomer generation, they're the reason why the wealth is, in terms of the transfer, is what it is, because they was able to extract the most amount of wealth. So they still sit on top of the tree. Now, granted, they're older. So as you age, generally speaking, I say generally speaking, your earnings should peak. Your earnings should increase. Your value should increase in terms of resources. So you could argue that's why boomers are at a higher level. But again, this is earning at the same age. So at the same age, baby boomers were 14% earning more than we were. And then Gen X is 11% more than we were. And then by 2016, the net worth of millennials, 20% behind that of baby boomers, and 40% behind Gen Xers. Now, again, that is a huge discrepancy, And here's the thing about that. People say, okay, but what does that all mean? I mean, is it all relative? Is it not relative? Is it good? Is it bad? Because all these are percentages. It could mean nothing in the scheme of things, but I'm going to tell you why it does mean a heck of a lot. Because if anyone knows Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which I'm going to get into right now, and that it's been updated, but essentially there's 5, just zoom in on this, there are 5 stages of need, or there's 5 pyramids that us as human beings require for us to pretty much be the happiest people on planet Earth. And as you can see here, you got physiological safety, love, belonging, esteem, and self-actualization. Now, the bottom pillar, this is your foundation. So effectively, these are what are your needs. Your needs are at the bottom, and then at the top is more a case of, again, self-actualization. They're just, that you cherry on top of the cake. That's essentially what it is. But at the bottom of it, we need to have these things. This is what's been described as what all people require to live a very happy life. That's what Maslow, that's his hierarchy of needs. And we're going to get into the first one because it all ties in place. And let me get here. So this is the original one. There have been more that have been used. They've been kind of expounded, but this is kind of the net of it in regards to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So there may be more, I grant you that, but this is the original, the basis of it. So the first one, this is the first pillar. This is something that they say all humans require just for physical survival. And this one is the physiological needs. And it says, these are biological requirements for human survival, e.g. air, food, drink, shelter, clothing, warmth, sex, and sleep. If these needs are not satisfied, the human body cannot function optimally. Maslow considered physiological needs the most important, as all the other needs become secondary until these needs are met. Now, the reason why I've gone here is because one of the big things that have screwed us millennials over, if you've been keeping up with what's going on in life, because right here you've got air, food, drink, shelter. Now, all of those things in our lifetime, I've gone with air. Well, I mean, air is air, food, drink, and shelter, clothing. All of these things require finances. That's why I brought up the net worth, because they all require finances. Plus, all of these in our lifetime have had a massive increase. And I'm going to get into shelter because that is where it's massively felt. But even food, I remember when I was younger and getting I know it sounds daft now, but like a Snickers bar. It used to be like a king size Snickers bar. It used to be, I think it used to be like 40p or something like that. But as the years gone up, it was like 45p, 50p, all these kind of things. I remember being able to get chips and cheese for like £1.10, and all these things have increased. All these things have completely spiraled out of control. So you got food, obviously drink, that included with the food and how we want to eat and drink. Shelter. Shelter is, I'm telling you right now, and I'm gonna go to this article that I read here in the Guardian about the average UK first time buyer, because this is one of the things which, as you grow up, as you grow older, one of the things that you're always taught is you need to, you move out to try and buy your home. This is what most adults, when it comes to, obviously safety is key, because again, this is the base level needs that most human beings require: their own place, their own home, especially if you're a growing adult, you're a man, you're a woman, you want your own space, you need it. And one of the key things that you need to do is be able to get on the housing ladder. Now, I know people rent, but people want to buy their homes. People like homes. People don't like living in, if I'm honest with you, cramped up spaces. People like their own homes. And check this out, as you've read, as you can see right here, the average UK first time buyer is now older than 30. 30. Now, keep this in mind. The oldest millennial is probably just about 40, 41, 42 years old. That's the oldest millennial. The youngest millennial is pretty much, less than 30, about 28 or something like that. So look at this article. The average age is highest in London at 33 as numbers rise, as record rate despite surging house prices. So house prices has gone up dramatically. I remember speaking to my parents' generation, my grandparents' generation, and they would tell me the cost of housing when they were younger. And I know it's all relative, but even till to that day, it was nowhere near as high as it is now. So think about this as millennials. We have to deal with a hell of a lot of more difficulty doing what these adults will say is a basic necessity. Because I remember always speaking to parents saying, "Oh, you're this age. How come you haven't done this? How come you haven't done that?" After them, look, it's not like your generation. We've had to deal with the surge of prices of this, surge of price of that. And don't let me start on wages. Wages have not increased in line with inflation and the cost of living. So how do you expect youngsters who are growing up in the millennial age to handle all this in society, get on the housing ladder, do all this kind of stuff, especially if, and this is the key now, if you can't rely on the bank of mum and dad? Because this is what a lot of times when people bust back about why you can't do this, why you can't do that, why can't you go to your mum and dad, why can't you go do that? Some people just don't have that option because it's so expensive to buy houses as a first-time buyer. But let's read this article. So the average age for joining the property ladder in Britain has risen to above 30 in every region of the country, as surging house prices mean first-time buyers must save for longer before they can afford their own home. So this delays, you could almost, the growing up stage. So when people talk about adulting, people talk about you guys are Peter Pan syndrome, because of the house prices so heavy, so high, because let's be honest, the population has increased in the UK. So in a lot of these urban areas, London, Birmingham, Manchester, there's a lot more people crammed into a small space because the UK is small. The UK is very small. So in terms of population per capita, it's at bursting point. So when you got increased people in there, you're going to have demand for houses is at an all-time high. The price for houses is going to be at an all-time high because it pushes up the prices. And also in the UK, as they do, because they love to sell to the highest bidder, a lot of foreign rich people come in and swoop down and take these houses, which means you, the average Joe, you and me, who lives in Britain all his life and born and grown up, they cannot buy the same type of prices or houses, because guess what? Some guy or some woman from, I don't know, some sheikh somewhere, or some Israeli person over here, or some sheikh has probably taken up half the block because they can afford it. But let's continue. So Halifax, the UK biggest mortgage lender, said the national average for a first-time purchase has risen to 32 in 2021 from 29 a decade earlier, and was above 30 for every region. So despite a record year for growth in first-time buyers, big up to all those people, with an increase of more than a third compared to 2020, it said rising average house prices meant waiting longer to become a homeowner than in previous generations. Very key. So the average age remains highest in London, as we can expect, at 33, although it has only risen by a year in the past decade. So that's pretty much totaled out. Other regions have recorded a sharper increase, including a 3-year jump in Wales to 31 and a rise of 2 years to 30 and 31 in the northeast and northwest of England. And that's very key, because the northeast and northwest of England, especially the northeast, it's the poorest region of England, the poorest region. And if those people there cannot afford to buy homes because the jobs aren't there, the jobs market have been moved, a lot of things have been centralized. So a lot of these people now, depending on where you live, you are doubly screwed, because you don't have the jobs, you don't have the industry, and guess what? You have to wait longer and longer and longer to buy your own home. This all delays this whole ideology of growing up. So when people say we're all entitled, we're all with this, the reasons why, which are outside of our control, we did not control the reason why these house prices have gone up. Now let's continue. So Esther, the mortgage director, Halifax, said the difficulty of raising a deposit, rising property prices, and changing lifestyle factors were pushing back the date at which people bought their first home. Of course, if you can't afford to buy your own home, you're gonna have to change how you move. Over time, more people have chosen to go on higher education, go traveling, or move around for work. which are all factors in the increase in first-time buyer age. However, undoubtedly, the biggest drivers of the cost of the homes and the need to save a significant deposit to get on a housing ladder in 2021, the increase in the average house price to 264,140 compared with difficulties in raising deposit meant that the gap between purchase price and deposit widened in every region in the UK. So think about this. Most mortgage companies demand that you have 10% of the average house price for you to get on the housing ladder. So you have to save 26K. With an average house price of 260, pretty much $250,000, you have to save 25K. Now, again, depending on what job you live in, depending on the circumstance you have, that's a heck of a lot, especially if you buy yourself. That's why a lot of people now, they do cohabitating. They buy first-time homes with a partner because it's just too expensive to do it by yourself. Halifax said the number of people buying the first home rose at a record rate in 2021, soaring by 35%. The biggest jump on records dating back to 2006, despite surging property prices. The council said it was clear the government's stamp duty holiday, which applies in England and Northern Ireland, have increased the availability of first-run homes as others moved up the property ladder. First-time buyers already benefit from full relief when purchasing a home worth up to 300K and reduced rate up to 500K. Now, that's big numbers. And I guarantee it, one thing that's not said in this article is, I wonder how they managed to get that deposit, because a lot of people, believe it or not, they do rely still on bank of mum and dad. There's another thing that is not really considered. But let's continue and finish off this article. So the figures come as ministers push to support first-time buyers, including through the government's Help to Buy scheme. The Bank of England is also considering watering down mortgage affordability rules in a development that could help more people on the property ladder. See, a lot of these things they're trying to do because they know the situation that's going in. A lot of millennials are in that age where they want to get on a housing ladder and just do what they need to do, but they can't. So the government's trying to step in, all these kind of people trying to step in, but it's just still the rates of home ownership among young adults have fallen dramatically in recent decades. Now, check this out. Plunging from a peak of 51% in 1989 to just 25% in 2016. Now, that is prime millennial age, people. From 1989, that is prime millennial age to 2016. Most millennials are really in that age range to be able to buy a house. So a peak of 51%, that's over half to a quarter in 2016. And this is according to the Resolution Foundation. Rates have risen slightly in recent years to 28% in 2019. It is absolutely crazy. So there is legitimate reasons, people, as to why millennials are the way. Why? Listen, if somebody lives at home, because even there's another stat which I forgot to pull up for the stream, but I'm pretty sure everyone knows this. More people are living at home with their parents past the age of 25. Matter of fact, past the age of 30. Purely because of the life situation, life circumstance that we find ourselves in. And here's the thing about millennials as well, which is, again, I don't want to go with this woe is me, but this is just the honest to God truth. When I was growing up, and we can thank Tony Blair for this, he wanted most people to go to university, which sounds like a very good thing, because it is. But Tony Blair had a scheme where he wanted everyone to really go into universities. He wanted everyone to get a degree. Now, that sounds good, except for, check this out. Now we had a situation, a market which was saturated with people who had degrees. So you could be in a McDonald's, especially a call center. If you've ever worked in a call center, I'm telling you, you're going to see this. You are going to see people in a call center who not only has a degree, but has a master's in a call center. Now, call centers were colloquially called the factories of pretty much the early 21st century. Most young kids, most people worked in call centers. I know I worked in call centers. But what you will find is this, because most people had degrees, that meant that the barrier to entry to jobs which were for the, let's just say, less qualified, they went to people who had degrees and some of them even masters. So here's what you had. You had a group of individuals, again, millennials, who went through the education route because we were told, go to education, go and get a degree. Get a degree, come out there, and you can't find a job. So check this out. You have pretty much locked an entire group of people outside of the job market because guess what? The barrier to entry is something completely different. Now, to get a master's, you have to pay at least 10K, as far as I'm aware. So it's not as if you could say, oh, yeah, I'm going to get a degree and get my master's. It ain't that simple. So what happened is, because of these situations, because a degree is really for advanced learning. It's not really for a lot of other things. It's even like this whole STEM situation. You know, STEM, people, was actually seen as a vocational educational route. It's not seen as it was today. So me as a millennial, I remember speaking to loads of people and always say, oh, you know, don't go to any like ex-polytechnics. If anyone's old enough to understand what that is, that's kind of a school which was there for more vocational, which was your engineering, your technology, all that kind of stuff. So this whole STEM push, that is a Generation Z thing. That is nothing to do with millennials. We were on the back end of that whole STEM push. So this whole idea of the digital age, all this kind of other stuff, which these Generation Z have opportunities for, we never had. We were told, go to university, go get your degree and you should get a job. Jobs weren't there. Also, 2009, guess what happened, people? The market crashed. So think about this. The housing market crashed, which caused a recession in 2009. Again, that was pretty much after a lot of millennials were going after their university. So at 2009, folks, a lot of millennials had just come out of university or going through that process. So in 2009, you had the housing crash, which had the recession, and then you had no jobs. And then it's like you couldn't get on the housing ladder because everything was in flux. So it's like you have a whole generation of people who couldn't afford to get on the housing ladder, had to stay at home because they just couldn't afford to do anything like that. Depending where you're on the UK, it's just crazy. So you had a whole host of situations that took place, which is like, listen, it's not like we want this to happen. This just happened as a fact. So I really do have to push back a lot of times when people are always so entitled, always so snowflakes, always so this, when these same baby boomers benefited off the time and place in which they could afford to buy homes at a cheaper price, which cost of living wasn't as bad, in which the population side wasn't as bad, which means they had access to healthcare in a better way. They had access to services in a better way. There are things in place. I'm not gonna say it's all great. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's all great, but they had situations in place which I'm like, listen, sometimes you can't compare. And then now you got the younger generation, the Generation Z. Now these generations, they benefit because guess what? You don't need to go to university nowadays to really get up and high in the world. This is another thing which is kind of killing me as well, because nowadays skills is what pays the bills. And you have so many things like Udemy, Udacity, in which you can legitimately have a computer science degree all for the cost of about £100. That's how serious it is. You see how the market has changed. But the problem is it's changed, but we have been almost the guinea pigs for a lot of these things. So now it's not necessarily about your degree. Now it's about, do you have any skills? Do you have skills? And to get these skills, you don't have to go through the degree route. You can go through the vocational route, and it's so much more accessible because guess what? When we were here, the internet was nowhere near what it was before. This is where, again, this is where now the younger generation have no absolute, there's no reason why young generation have any excuses in terms of information, because the information that is available now was nowhere near available. There was no like Khan Academy where you could just learn mathematics online because you had crappy teachers. There was no Udemy, there's no Udacity where you can learn all these wonderful courses like that. There was nothing like that at all. There was no apprenticeship schemes like most companies are now obligated to do. So if you go to most bigger companies, they have a graduate scheme in which graduates, or even before graduates, after you've gone A levels, they can get into a good company. They'll train them up, they'll pay them good wages, and they'll basically shoot past people who've been there way years and years before. I remember in my workplace that had a graduate scheme, and I've been working my backside off, going through the process of getting the job, trying to work my way up. And then you had these graduates coming in on big time wages. They'll just do their little bidding, and then they'll be completely parachuted way above a lot of people who've been there for years. And it's like, whoa. And it's all because they came in at the right time and took advantage of the right opportunities. So a lot of times I'm like this, bro. Sometimes, and again, I have to be fair. I'm not saying that millennials don't get a little bit entitled. Millennials don't get a little bit this and, oh, we want this. I'm not saying that's not the case, but there are mitigating circumstances as to the reason why we are the way that we are. Again, average house prices are going higher. Cost of living is going higher. There's a tax rise this year. National, what do we call it? The gas price, the energy price is going up. I know that affects everybody. National insurance is going up. Everything is going up. Everything is going against us. And yet people be telling us, you should bring the house ladder. You should be doing this. You should be doing that. You should be doing this. You should be. When I was your age, I was like this. No. There's a reason why we say these things. And and at the moment, again, it's not like it's getting that much better, but I'm just saying we would seem to be, in my opinion, trapped at a certain stage of whatever existence we've been in at this time, where it just seems the tide seems to swing in a wrong way. And it's almost like when we wanted to get above the tide, it will come back just to sweep us in again. It's like, geez. So I do get the reason why a lot of millennials do act that the way that they do, which is why they seem to come across as these whiny, complaining snowflakes. Now, again, I gotta say it. I'm not here to say that, woe is me, we're all hard done by, because there are great things that we can achieve and we are achieving if we do put our heads down. But I'm just saying, there are a lot of things that took place which I look back now and think, wow. I mean, all people do this if they had the knowledge now, but I'm telling you, there are so many things which we were led to believe because that was the path to go down. And unfortunately, as time has always told us, whether it was right or whether it was wrong, it just is what it is. Now, again, I didn't want to speak too long. I wanted to get some opinions from millennials, hopefully, or anyone else. That's fine. So I'll put the link in the chat. So I'm more than happy for each and every one of you to come up. Let me actually just pin this to the top because we get a bad rep out here. We get an absolute bad rep out here. And again, some of it is justified. Do not get me wrong. But you know what? A lot of these things we're just, I think Will Smith did a song way back and actually released in 1989 that, parents just don't understand. We're just misunderstood. And this is what it is. A lot of these things took place and we're just misunderstood. KB, welcome to the stream, man. How is it going? How's the family?
I'm on mute. Shame, what an idiot. Good. What are you saying, my bro? You good?
Yeah, what are you saying? All good, man. All good. It's all live.
Yeah, everybody's good. Peace to the chat. Peace to the chat. Another great stream, bro. Brother, all week I've been arguing with these boomers. You see these lot, yeah? Bro, you see the retirement home? It's looking real good right now. Anyway.
That's funny stuff. That's
good. Yo, bro, I love what you're saying. Now, as you was going, I was thinking of a few things. So I'm gonna go through a few bits. Just okay. So great thing. The main concept you're bringing up is obviously this concept of wealth, finances, etc. We was writing in the chat. Me and Skills were talking about it, and I think a few others. Apart from the lack of wealth transfer, which you very, very well explained and showed in your grasp and your opening monologue. Another thing that really gets me with the boomers, right, is the concept of, I don't feel like they passed on any knowledge in terms of credit, what credit actually, even what credit actually is. Most people that are our age, to me, maybe just my circles, they didn't understand the concept of credit till they got to like uni age or early 20s when they really kind of needed it. Aside from that, I feel like, and this is with not all but most, because in the few occasions I have seen the boomer parents be actively involved, particularly in that part of a millennial's life, I wrote it as well, they tend to do very well. What a surprise. Another thing as well is I don't feel like they taught us the concept of how we can go about making money. Now, I know things were different for, then compared to when we were born and growing up, but just like you mentioned, the boomers were after the Second World War. It was almost like everything had reset. So they was in a position to set precedents, if you know what I mean. Rather than just leaving us to it. A lot of the time, I feel like there's a sense of they just leave us to it. We're just supposed to know. Another thing I find with boomers as well is I find they're quite they don't seem to be socially aware of the current climate. I think they believe for some reason, or maybe they're just plain ignorant, that things were as when they were, i.e. house prices, i.e. the concept of, I've heard a boomer in my time talk to a millennial, let's say a millennial teenage girl who's got a child, for example. Oh, why don't you just go to the council? They'll give you a property. No, they won't. It's not your time when they just gave you lot of stuff. I spoke to my mum, and the amount of things she said when I was born mid-80s, where the things they used to just give her, just give her because she had a child. Like, she bared, even the concept of filling in forms and administration was a far fetch for them. It almost was like, fill this in, here you go. Do you know what I mean? Even in terms of, like it was mentioned before, things like degrees. It was almost like, get any degree. I think someone was saying it, just get any degree, you'll be fine. No, it's not as simple as that, because, back, I don't know, I can't even say back then because I wasn't alive, but our degrees are specific to certain things. And as you quite rightly pointed out, again, I'm one of the products of Tony Blair's whole uni thing, which in one concept was great because it gave hope to a lot of people to go to uni. Again, I believe maybe my peers, I don't know, but a lot of people my age had this sort of concept of, oh, I wish I can go to uni, or if I can go to uni. It wasn't seen as this automatic line of what you go through in life compared to others. It was always an if, but maybe, if I can afford it. And again, how did we get that mindset by the time we got to late teenage age? Because I don't think we was given any hope, incentive. I have to say this slightly as well. Some Gen Xers get on my nerves as well, because a lot of Gen Xers are things like our uncles, aunties, older cousins, older siblings. They can be just as bad sometimes as well, actually. And again, this might not be all the cases, but some of you might know what I'm talking about. Sometimes the boomers favor the Gen Xers. It's this thing with 80s babies. I don't know why 80s and early 90s babies, they just, as you said, they consider us entitled, lazy. We're supposed to just know. And it's not the case at all. And when you try to explain something to them, in the cases I've seen, male, female, and I think this crosses races, they just consider us, back chatters. See, I think compared to Gen Xers as well, again, people that might have older siblings, I bet you, in a lot of cases, you got in trouble more than your older sibling. Why? Because Gen Xers are kiss asses a lot of the time. They got the last sort of sprinkles of the sort of Passovers, the wealth. We, a lot of the time, were left with it. We're left to just go onto our own devices, find a way around the world, and then don't complain. Oh, look, everything's here. The internet, there's phones, there's this, there's that. But that doesn't mean the world's getting smaller, but it doesn't mean that life's easier to navigate, because things are going up. Inflation is going up. Like you said, White Matters, a lot of people, when they left uni, the recession happened.
Yep.
So, I know so many people, and I can't give an accurate percentage, but I'm going to go as far as to say at least 50% of the people I know that have got degrees that are 40 and under are not doing what they do in the role they did that degree for.
Facts. Absolute facts.
So I just wanted to just say all that first. Yeah.
You raised a couple of points, which I was going to say before, let me wait and see what people are going to say. And the first thing you said was about credit management or finance management. And this was very key, because I'll be blunt. I got myself into a world of pain early on, which for anyone if there's any advice that you want for anyone to listen to who's younger than me, I'll say this. You can get yourself into debt in a blink of an eye. To get yourself out of debt, that could take you over a decade, even more, depending on how much debt you've acquired, what's going on. And that can mess up your credit report for a heck of a long time. And this is what I had to learn in a very hard way. Now, during the recession, one of the things which came about, and I'm pretty sure you both know, payday loans.
Oh God, I got sucked in so many times, bro. Oh no.
I'm telling you, it killed so many people. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I did take out a few. So a payday loan, for people who don't know, because again, now they're all gone. Funny enough, they're all gone. They've all pretty much gone bust, or they've all been the regulations have moved them out. But payday loans were short-term loans which were supposed to see you to the next payday, next salary, but the interest rate was, bro, it was a daylight robbery. So if I borrowed £200, I'll probably have to pay £600, £500 back the very next time. And people got into the debt trap. So think about that. And once you default on some of these things, your credit cards, because you had the PPI loan misfortune as well that took place, where there was mis-selling PPI, they were mis-selling this to people. So people paying a hell of a lot more interest, and your credit report was just screwed. And if you haven't got good credit, you're going to be screwed in terms of life, because you need credit to buy a house. You need credit to, bro, finance management was something which a lot of people had to learn the hard way.
Brother, let me tell you, that same period of time, right? And it wasn't even just a payday loan, but it was a short period of loan. I think it was over the course of like a year or something, yeah? So that was probably the first time I probably had like 5 grand for anyone that's not from the UK, 5 grand in any one time. Bro, again, because of just learning about the concept of credit and getting excited by it, but not have been taught about it. Do you know how quick I blew that 5 grand? I just blew it, bro. I just blew it. Why? Oh my God, I got credit now. I didn't know what to do with it. So I'm just saying that, yeah, bro. So yeah, I feel you, definitely.
Yeah, and this is the thing, and the thing is, I'm going to say this: there's always accountability, which I'll always own up to. Do not get me wrong, but I'm telling you, there's certain it's just tidbit of advice and just things which the old generation did, which probably was just better if they would just say, look, this is what's going to happen. This is likely to happen. This is what credit report is. This is what it does. Because what happens is people just sell you up for anything. They're just like, give you this, give you that. And you're young, you're just going to take it. I was like in college, university age. I'm like, yeah, we can do this. We can give you an overdraft. Because if you go to university, you can get an overdraft for £2,000. So think about it. That's technically not your finances. But like, yeah, don't worry about it. You can go in an overdraft. And all these things.
Why, man? Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question, because I know you're as bad as me. Your first 3 months, did you spend any of your uni money on things you're supposed to? Because I didn't.
Nope. I probably spent it on a few books and stuff, but I'm like, bro, I got rich.
I was swagged out, bro. Oh, bro, swagged out. Anything I could buy, I would buy it. Anything that would swipe, I would. No, yeah, it was swipe. You can start to sign them. You see that? You see the little flex when you could sign? Just swipe the thing, bro. It's fine. Buy another drink. It's calm. It's calm. I got a bag. It's calm.
And then when the next like round of bursaries come in or next round of this, I'm good. But
I'm good. I'm just gonna blow it all, and then
I'm living in credit. You know what I mean? It was just like, man. And again, I gotta say, I'm not gonna, it is my responsibility. I take full responsibility for it. But it's just, I'm telling you, man, these are the things that took place during an age of a recession. During an age where jobs were getting bleaker, where the market wasn't what it was, where there was none of this stuff about take a £40 course to get yourself skilled up in this. This wasn't the landscape we find today, which a lot of us had to go through. So it's crazy. It's just, knowledge was something which for some families it was transferred. For a lot of people, it just wasn't transferred in that sort of fashion. So a lot of things now, which just, I tell you, these youngers likely will probably take for granted, but man, we needed that. I'm telling you. Jesse, sorry, I want to go across. Thanks, KB. Definitely, I'll definitely come back to you. Jesse, welcome.
Yeah, hello. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear, man. Loud and clear.
Yeah, because I got a mic, high quality mic. But yeah, I came here. I just wanted to spill drop some knowledge on here because this let's say this topic is very, very very interesting, and I probably could add a lot of value to this conversation, considering I am also a millennial. I'm 30 years old at the moment, right? And I would say out of all, like, for example, all the pitfalls, I think I've avoided almost all of them, really. Like, I'm in zero debt. I'm in a very good situation. And to be honest, here's the funny thing when I hear the talk of millennials, which I find is quite interesting, is it's the generation before the millennials that put us in this situation in the first place. Right? Especially, let's say, like, for example, there's this idea that, oh, millennials are spoiled, people even if you look at the black aspect of things as well, yeah. Like, we got it tough. Like, considering, right, look, the oldest millennial is about what, 41?
Yeah, roughly about that, yeah.
Right, about that, right? So most black millennials had to deal with racism, being denied of certain services, right? Single parent households were at all-time high, so we didn't really have any guidance from our fathers, so we had to basically figure out things for ourselves, right? And that's why we get caught. That's why we get caught up in some of these situations, like when you're talking about it's like university loans. I even got away from that trap, and I'll tell you a genius way how I avoided it, right? And also the fact is that there's jobs now where you can make more money than some university degrees do. Like, two notable examples is a social media manager, right? I know
that's a new thing as well. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, that's a relatively new thing, right? And also even something relatively old as well, which is a train driver, right? People be sleeping on train drivers. I know train drivers who are only working 3 times a week, and they're earning up to 50,000 to 70,000 a year full time. And full time in train driver language is basically 3 days. So basically, it's really the matter of guidance that was given to us in generation. We were basically lost. And then you also look at how relationships between the genders also kind of went south in the early 2000s with the introduction of social media and things like that, right? So in a way, we, it looks good on paper, right, for us millennials, but in a way we had it harder in more of a psychological way than anything else.
You know, that's a very good point you raised, because you raised social media, and I didn't say this in my monologue, but we grew up where social media started to have that turn. So I remember when I was in, I think 2006, Facebook was, well, I had MySpace and all that kind of stuff, but Facebook really was the first of its kind in that new wave of social media. And obviously, we've seen social media, the rise and rise and rise and rise of social media, in which, again, we weren't ready. A lot of people still to this day aren't ready for it. So we talk about people are snowflakes. A lot of things are just like, a lot of baby boomers can't handle the things that happen on social media, let alone anything else. So there's a lot of social, again, psychological things which you're correct, you had to navigate. And again, how can somebody navigate around, I don't know, what do you call them, nudes that get passed around? How does a baby boomer or someone of that generation can relate to something like that when it's like all your information gets out there? It's a very new time, which again, like I said, there are responsibilities on our part, don't get me wrong, but it's just, yeah, it's just one of those weird things, isn't it?
Yep. And yeah, that's the problem. Like, for example, people are now like scientists are now realizing that the brain, like the millennial brains, are producing more dopamine or being more dysfunctional in dopamine than it's ever been before, to the exposure of, like, naughty websites, social media, even certain processed foods. Now, those are some of the things that the generation before didn't really have to deal with, and we're still trying to find ways to defeat some of these vices. Like social media. Now I'm seeing children ending up in social media, right? Like recently you hear about, what's it, Kanye West's daughter on social media, and she's only 8 years old, right?
I know,
Like,
I know.
right, you've got this going on, right? Like, I go on my Instagram, right, and I'm seeing children dancing and flipping like Instagram. I'm thinking, why the hell are they even there? you know and that was an escalation from the millennials and the normalization of social media, but not the regulation of social media. Because there's a lot of normalization of social media. Yeah, social media is part of our life. Yeah, the other. But it wasn't good enough regulation. And that's what you're seeing with some of the vices in millennials. Like, millennials ain't having as much sex now as any other generation, right? And I know why that is. Like, it's a three-pronged attack of, let's say, naughty websites, no fathers in the home, and basically masculinity being pretty much, let's say, being trodden upon or basically downplayed. So yeah, and also now men have woken up to the traps of marriage, and basically child support, and people are like, basically millennials are learning the mistakes of their previous generation.
No,
So
yeah,
yeah.
you said a few things there which for definitely we need to talk about and unpack a little bit more. But no, definitely do want to talk on some of those things. Let me just navigate to Mr. Paley. Mr. Paley,
Yeah.
welcome. I think this is the first time up on the show. How are you?
I'm doing fine, doing fine. Can everybody hear me good?
It's a little bit noisy, distorted. I don't know if you get to a place where it's a bit quieter.
Now I can get where it's a little bit quieter, but I'm just gonna. Yeah. Everything you said, everybody said was great contributions, and I believe the same thing. Like in America, I feel the same way. It was the previous generations; they didn't do that much to help this generation. But I think as this generation, the millennials, me too. I'm a millennial. I was born in '86. I think that we just have to focus on making the next generations better, because the other generations just didn't care at all, like not at all. They had their eyes on themselves and themselves, but they want to complain. So we're a product of their incompetence. But I think it's only going to make this next generation stronger, because we're learning. Even though we learned the hard way, I think it's always a generation has to learn the hard way, because you understand, before the baby boomers, the generation before them had to learn the hard way. So we're like basically the reincarnation of the generation that birthed the baby boomers, because we go into war, but our war is more social and more ideological, and trying to reinvent ourselves in the new ways of technology that we have. So that's our journey for the next generation. Thank you very much.
No, I definitely hear that, and I do appreciate your contribution. And that's the interesting thing. I do want to ask you a question, then, Mr. Pelu. Do you think then I hate using this word, are we millennials are we unsavable? Because you mentioned that, you know, there's the young generation going to see our faults. Are we a case of can we come back from this? Because I know a lot of millennials, people say we're too far gone, we're all this, we're that, we're narcissists, we're entitled, because of, again, we go into the traps that we fell into. Older generation didn't probably help us out. Do you think there's a way back for us?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think there is a way back. I mean, a lot of people are going to come back. We're going to be successful later in life, but it's like we fought awards. I mean, I'm like that's why I related this generation, the millennials, to the generation that birthed the baby boomers. What I mean by generation birthed the baby boomers, like the ones who actually fought the World War II and all of them. If we like, well, now we have a social war. It's a cultural war, and that's the war we have to fight. Like, who are we for the future generation? The other generation, they dropped the ball on the culture war, and they're still promoting things that are detrimental to us. Why? I have no idea, except for them not caring and them forgetting that they're going to die. But as long as, I mean, the way I look at it, I always look at things like I know I'm going to die, so what I'm going to leave for the next generation to follow me, you know, because we could say we didn't have this, we didn't have that, but oh well, we don't have it. I mean, we're going to die anyway, so what are we going to leave for us who went back, and are we going to teach them hard taught lessons and make transfer of knowledge a priority? Because that wasn't made a priority because of selfishness. So we have to be the most unselfish generation, considering the situation that we found ourselves in coming into this world. Thank you very much.
No, I hear you. I definitely hear you. And one of the things which how I see myself, I always see myself as either like 5 years to 7 years behind where I want to be. And I think that's, again, all due to the fact of all this information, everything that's taken place. It's shifted the whole generation, that we're now taking longer to do things which in previous generation it would have already been done, just because of everything that's taken place. And one of the things which should take place, which I know Mr. Pelu and Jesse, you mentioned, I want to open up to the chat now, is the attack on, because the red pilling of men is like it's an old thing, but millennials are really into this red pill stuff. A lot of it's because of the toxic masculinity, just the marriage. A lot of these things, again, are the reason why marriage rates are declining, divorce rates obviously increasing. But a lot of marriages for us, especially in like the Afro-Caribbean community, of the Black community, of the two, it is no way near the same as it used to be in our previous generations. Now, is this definitely a factor in terms of the reason why we're the way we are, because of the fact that we're seeing divorce rates, single childhood, toxic masculinity? Does this make sense?
Can I reply first?
Yeah, go ahead, KB.
Right. Okay. I agree with what some people are saying. Our generation can be a little bit spoiled and entitled. I agree. However, I do attribute a lot of the blame to the older generation. Exactly the example you're using, why it matters. Right. Where a lot of the stuff is skewed that we're seeing now, let's say the marriage you're saying, first of all, right? A lot of the arguments back and forth were, the men of now generation don't look after, protect, provide, etc., not real men, all this other stuff, like our fathers, grandfathers, whatever. Fine. First of all, the incomes, in terms of the careers and everything, was different. You literally could have one parent working and not even at the highest tier or percentage of job and look after the whole family quite easily. That's number one. Number two, that's also the same generation where, and again, we're males, but let's be honest, you just use the phrase toxic masculinity. Any sort of, to me, anything we know of that from our generation, a lot of it comes from there. That's the same generation where someone would have, say, a family, a wife, a man would have a wife and 4 children. And then maybe 2 streets down the road, he's got a mistress and she's got a kid. Do you know what I mean? And or it's that sort of situation where there's a married couple and the dad steps out the father steps out all the time. But because the wife is well kept, in terms of being looked after, financially providing, and the family she may not have said anything or may not feel like it's her place to say anything. Again, wrong. So you get all these things where, for example, you get younger women that are like, no, I'm not doing what my mum did. My dad cheated all the time. She didn't say anything. I agree. The same token where, and I know a lot of a decent percentage of our generation are following the traits of abandoning their children, but a lot of the abandoning of the children was started or at least done by them, because a lot of millennials, male and female, all the way from the scale, what did we say, 41 to what, 27? Most of us don't have dads. So realistically, first of all, we're just following suit. Secondly, a lot of you lot left, or sort of, you know, a lot of us millennials have got the situation of we're stepbrothers or sisters to other people, and our dad made a family with the woman he favored. Again, that sort of character, that sort of way of doing things, we saw it play out. And where I find, on top of that sort of action, very disrespectful, is a lot of us can tell the story why they didn't do it discreetly. It was like this open thing, but not to be said, you know. And we're taking on these tropes. So we're following on. I don't know if you guys have seen this documentary that's been going around the last sort of week or so about the group of girls from 1986, and it was all single mums. And it's been going around quite a bit. It's fascinating, and a few people are going at them. But I've made a couple of comments like, no, okay, these girls would have been Gen X, but let's say they were 16 in 1986, for example. They was born in 1970. So what happened between 1950 something and you had that child in 1970 for her to go and have a child in 1986? Do you know what I mean? Now that child born in 1986 is what 36? I almost guarantee that child, that 1986 baby has now a child. They may even have a grandchild right now. It wouldn't surprise me. And it's all these sort of traits passed on. It's like it's that whole notion of they want to criticize but not advise. We're always getting told what to do wrong, showing the wrong example, but we have to then do correct. Also as well, and again, this might be up for debate, but I believe millennials are better parents, to be honest. I believe the way we were more involved in our kids' lives, we're more, and when I say involved, not just involved, just a parent being involved, actively involved. We try to steer our children in the same direction, but without that sort of harsh repercussions that some people had from, like, boomer parents that push their kids to go far, but it was that overly harsh discipline.
Let me ask you questions, KB. Sorry to cut. Let me just ask you a quick question on this, because I hear you on that, because I know, again, my mom was like, when I was younger, I used to get beat like crazy, and the generations have gone a little bit different in terms of how they would correct their child. Let's just say that. Now, people say that's the reason why kids nowadays are out of control, whereas back in the day, like, you couldn't even look at your parent in the eye, otherwise he'll box you. So
exactly.
Other thing I'm going to say is this: I do think there's something in that where we're more involved and we have a different approach. But the question is, I suppose, is that better or worse?
On the main, it's okay. Do I believe we love our kids, if you want, whatever the term of love your kids, more than the older generations? I think so. But because of our trauma, see, okay, so someone brought, I think it was you, Jesse, that said, no, sorry, I think it was Jesse or Mr. Pellu, doing a comparison between millennials and Gen Zs. I feel like a lot of the time, millennials and Gen Zs are quite close. I feel like they, even though they're younger than us, I feel like in a lot of ways they can relate to us. They see our examples and so on. But because we've got so much trauma, in a lot of cases, we're passing on the trauma. Now, this sounds weird, but we're passing on sometimes destructive behaviors unconsciously, and we're also doing it from a place of love, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Even on the aspect, and this might sound strange, and guys, tell me if I'm looking at it from the wrong angle, but even I find with a lot of millennials, because to be honest with you, I feel like I'm guilty of this, that we especially in a material way, we overcompensate our kids. We get our stuff too much. We get our kids too much stuff. One of the most common phrases I've heard millennials say about their children is, "Oh, my son or daughter is gonna have everything I didn't have." A lot of the time, what we didn't have was material things that make us just day-to-day sort of things, or we had to, sort of beg almost. So it's like we overcompensate in that way. Again, which is come from a place of love, but then it can make some Gen Z spoil because they've had this expectancy. again, I know the society's moved on, but millennials are the first group of people I can think of that would buy their 6-year-old a phone, would buy their 10-year-old a PS5, no problem. But I recall when we was about 10 or something, even if something like, I don't know, an NES was out, oh, you're too young for that. Do you know what I mean? Like with us, it's almost like, oh, of course I'll get you that. And we'll do things like, again, a place of love, because we'll do like, oh, I'll you know, if I've got to work 2 jobs so my son or daughter can get A, B, and C, I'm going to do it. Which, okay, great, but you know, at the same time, you know, we can push them too far the other way. Also, what I wanted to touch on is something you mentioned earlier, Jesse, about mental health. I find a lot with our generation, and I feel like we're the first ones who really try to push this to become at least a discussion, is that a lot of our generation, again, is suffering from trauma and depression, and particularly depression is very much dismissed. I think it was the first, I feel like it was the first generation that really said, look, I'm not happy. Look, I feel this way. I feel that way. But unfortunately, a lot of us were dismissed. You know, I think that falls into some of the stereotypes of we use it as an excuse. But, you know, someone said earlier as well, mate, we're the guinea pigs for a lot of things. You know, I don't like to think that's our purpose. I mean, I shouldn't think that. But yeah, a lot of that was ignored of us as well. Mental health, our mental trauma. And on top of it, like you said, we're the MTV generation as well. We're getting attacked from all different type of angles, depending where you are in the world. Let's say, example, in the States, you had an influx of, you know, the 80s drug era. Again, different sort of things. Yeah, so there's a lot with us. There's this, yeah.
No, 100%. Yeah. Mr. Pelu, you wanted to say something? Sorry, I just wanted to. Yeah, I think you wanted to jump in.
Yeah. Oh, hold on a second. Yeah, I wanted to say, yeah, it's a lot of things going on, but it's almost like now the best thing we could do as our generation is mentor Generation Z, and what we have our kids do better for them. Like, I understand why people feel that way, because even my cousins and everybody who have kids, like they get their kids a lot of stuff that I probably wouldn't have that quick. They always get new stuff. I mean, I never got new stuff as much as them. Little kids now are having cell phones, and it's just the time is changing. But I think the one thing that I think we will be better parents. I think the millennials definitely will be better parents, because they understand how much information transfer means so much to the people, the way the last generation just didn't really didn't really grasp. And I have a question from the comments. My friend Coach Love, she said, what did the Vietnam generation have to do with it? Right? She said she wants us to talk about Vietnam, and I think that's a good question, because I think it plays more into the whole situation that happened, that there was a culture war, right? If you look at the time after the civil rights movement, I mean, I come from more of an American standpoint. I'm from America. I live in Washington D.C., right? So if you look at the time, if you live the post civil rights generation, there was a huge different cultural things that coming on. We have different schools of thought coming from Europe. You have your cultural Marxism. You have your whole left, your whole postmodernism. You have a lot of different movements that affect different people's thoughts, especially after the Vietnam War and the generations the fought that wars, the hippies, the free love, and everything, and everything like that. So that, to me, that plays a big role in everything that happens, because before that we didn't have free love, we didn't have the sexual revolution, there wasn't a lot of things that happened before. So I think we got in the back end of all the stuff, even the crack era and all things like that. So it's just a big learning lesson that we got to do, that we know that our main job now is not even economical, it's cultural, is reinventing the culture of the Western world. So that's our main thing. If we reinvent our culture, we could reinvent a better economic future. But that's where we're collapsing, and that's what we got to focus on. Because if not, everything in our culture and in our society will collapse. Thank you.
You know how you mentioned culture, right? Here's something that I seen, right, which happened recently, right, which I think is a big problem in Black culture, or just in culture in general, right? Especially millennial culture, because Rihanna's a millennial, right? She's 33 years old, right? Now, people are going to think, what has Rihanna got to do with this? Right? It's actually to do with how the modern day culture is celebrated, right? You have Rihanna, who is arguably one of the richest women in the world. She's a billionaire, right? Married to a rapper slash thug, right? Out of wedlock, right? Because they ain't married. I don't think they're engaged, right? And that is celebrated, right? You are marrying a guy. Well, you're having a child out of wedlock, unmarried, with a thug, right? With a thug slash rapper who has a criminal record and a shady past, right? He hasn't got a very nice record, right? And that is now celebrated. Now, this is why when I look at this, right? And I look at how people have received it, everyone's like, oh, congratulations. Oh, that's amazing, so on and so forth. Now, if you rewinded that clock, say 50 years ago, maybe 60 years ago, this would be something that would be frowned upon.
No,
Do
you're
you
right.
see-
And this is the thing about it's the cultural freedom. So I think what you're both saying is essentially we have already been kind of the first generation, or maybe Generation X will probably disagree here, but for definite, we've had a unprecedented amount because of the again the pill, the birth of the contraception pill. Everyone's having sex now. It's like freedoms, isn't it? The stigma is gone. I remember even when I was younger, there's still a stigma with the old generation about, again, in your case with Rihanna, having a child, could proudly showing a child that you've had and you're not married. That was not something that was done. Even in black culture, you know what I mean? This wasn't nothing that they were all, in black culture, even back then, that was frowned upon. I know, especially a lot of us who grew up in a lot of religious backgrounds, you could not be up in any sort of church or mosque with that showing. You had to leave because that was sign of definitely disrespect. But now you're right, it's a completely different story. The whole culture's changed, and with that becomes unfortunate consequences. So no, I hear you.
And that's why, like, when I look at the culture now, it's not breeding positive progressiveness,
Well, this
right?
was going to ask you, because we assume that it's always negative. Now, you said positive progressing. Now, Rihanna is a billionaire, so she kind of does have a little bit of a different type of lifestyle than what we would have. But I get what you're saying, where it's just probably the promotion of it. I get what you're saying, but let's be honest, they're on different wavelengths that we would never aspire to. So whether or not they're married or not married, it's just like it ain't gonna make a difference, really, does it?
Well, I would say not a difference for them, but if you look at and what I'm talking about in terms of progressive culture is, I mean, it's a regression, and let me explain what I mean by this. Right? Yeah, Rihanna's fine; she has millions of dollars. You know, ASA, the Rocky guy, whoever his name is, yeah, he's got money, so on and so forth. But it's really about influence, right? Rihanna is arguably one of the most influential women in the world, and is a big influence on a lot of black women and in black culture, right? She's from Barbados, right? Now they're okay, but the type of message that you're bringing out to young girls who are gonna think, oh hey, you know what? I could be a Riri too. I could go and marry a thug or a rapper, and everything's gonna be fine. Not realizing they don't have the same net worth as those two do. You know, it's basically the message that is being portrayed, and that's what I mean by progressive culture. Is that, look, it's the image and the influence it's going to have on the younger generation. Like, she's a very influential person, and that they have that type of image being portrayed. It's just gonna, especially in the Western European, or even, you know, in America in some cases, right? It's gonna have a negative. It's gonna have a negative effect, because more people gonna think, oh, okay, if Riri is having a child out of wedlock, and I'm just being honest, that relationship with Rocky, whatever his name is, I don't think that's gonna last for the long term, right? If you look at how these celebrity relationships work, but it's now making it more socially acceptable to say, hey, it's okay, let's have children out of wedlock, everything's gonna be fine, everything's gonna be okay. Right? And that's the message that is basically being portrayed, right? Because people are gonna say, oh, you know what, Riri's had a child out of wedlock, it's fine, I could do it too. Because let's be real, very big influential people, celebrities, so and so forth, famous people, they take on, they are influenced and sometimes emulate some of these celebrities' actions.
No, I hear you, and there's unfortunately you are right. And even though I think even Rihanna was pretty much saying she wanted to reject some role model tag, but you're right, they are role models. And so one of the things I wanted to put again, open question to the panel is this: I'm kind of still a firm believer in the mark of a community starts with the home, and if the home's intact, the community is generally likely to be intact. If the home itself, again, this is your mother, father, children, the nuclear family. If that's out of tact or not intact, shall I say, it's dysfunctional, the likelihood the community that they come from is going to be dysfunctional. Again, there are outliers, but if on the majority of it, if that's the case, it replicates. So then, with these choices, then are we saying that us as millennials, we've not seen or we've not sought to replicate a good model, which is why we're in this way? Because we talk about relationships. Obviously, Rihanna, millennial age, clearly she felt as if she didn't need to go down the traditional route because, again, talk about culture. Is that an indictment then on us as millennials in terms of us, or is that just we've decided that it's just because, again, with divorce rates, we talk about child child support, all these things, indictment of what we came into, or is this an indictment on us as the people? Open question, if that made sense.
Yeah, let me try to do a real quick answer this real quick. Yeah, I think it's an indictment on the millennials because at this time we're adults. Though we're adults. At one point we have to be adults, right? We have to say yes. We were given we weren't given the best guidance coming up, but are we going to change it? Because we have enough in our history, enough in our knowledge bank that we can make the relevant changes and adaptations that we need to do. So we got to put the onus on ourselves, and we have to start saying that. I mean, it's good the beginning of our conversation how we started. Yes, is a fact. We were not given the best. We're not given the best guidance, right? But that should be our motivation to be better people. Say, you know what? Forget the past. So we have better people. We learn from their mistakes, but do better. So that's an indictment of us because people know that's not the best way to live. No matter, even the millennials know they shouldn't be like that. Even though we were brought up like that, because don't get me wrong, I was brought up in a neighborhood where very few people had their father in the house. I had my father in the house. I had a couple of friends that had their father in the house, but like well over half of the people in the house went to single moms. Well more than half the people in the neighborhood. You know what I'm trying to say? So I mean that's the way we grew up, and we see it as and we know it's bad, right? But of course we were normalized to it. Unfortunately, we're normalized to it, but we have it in our history to that we know that's not the best way, and we need to make the relevant changes. And it becomes a point in time where we have to say, you know what, we have to make the change. We got to be the change we want to see. So it is an onus on us to be that change. Thank you.
No, I hear that, and it's definitely one of my gripes for the red pillars, because a lot of these guys are still complaining about the same issues about why they're where they are at 50 years old. It's crazy, and I'm like, well, I can understand if you're 20 years old, but at a certain age, you're a grown man. You should be able to. I want to say know exactly what choices you make and what consequences, and if you make that choice, then accept everything that comes your way. So yeah, it's always interesting when I always listen to the first thing that people say. But yeah, sorry, go Jesse, go ahead.
Yeah, when you're talking about the red pillars, right? The red pillars are just a symptom of a problem, right? And it's just a lack of guidance. Because what I notice about some of these red pillars, and considering I used to be a red pill person many years ago, which I'm not anymore, thank God for that, right? Is basically some of them, not all, but many of them are either so socially awkward or don't have guidance from their fathers, and I've noticed this, right? And considering I've been in the MGTOW community at one point, left, right, red pill as well, because MGTOW is technically red pill as well, right? I'm just being honest, like most of these dudes that are talking about women and so on and so forth, talking about how they got 6 figures, and they're full of shit. Because like if
Nice
you look,
book.
yeah, for real, like if you look at the science, right, there's one book that there's one book and there's one guy that if I wanted that person to come into the red pill space, right, I completely obliterate it. It's a guy called Mike Buss, right, or Matt Buss, right? He's a writer of a book called The Evolution of Desire, right? I recommend if there's any men out there who want to know about what truly attracts women, how to stay in relationships and so forth. He created basically some of biggest database in regards of female and male nature, right? And it's based off science, stats, data, everything. And then what you notice is most of these red pill people full of shit, right? And that's why I left, but there was many other reasons why. And it's a symptom. Red pill is just a symptom of a problem. Like, because men can't talk, also men can't really talk about their issues like that. Because if men if men talk about their issues or they complain about something, there's a stereotype or there's a stigma that men are just weak, right? That's why you look at how men are like men are just how can I really put it? Are like they're meant to be strong all the time, and then you wonder why there's such a big like suicide rate in males, right? And then if you even look at recent events, right, when men do open up about their problems, for example, Kanye West, right? I really sometimes feel sorry for this dude, right? There was a time when he was running, I think he was running to be the president or something, and he basically bust out in tears and he was crying and he was talking about his mother or was a parent or whatever, right? Some trauma that he went through. And if you look at how the media portrayed him, they portrayed him as crazy. But if you actually looked at what he was talking about, the dude was just upset and he needed an outlet to speak out, right? And that's why sometimes people gravitate to these male spaces and red pill stuff, right? So that's just really that. And also, even if you look at Will Smith, for example, when let's say the entanglement, right? Will Smith came out, talked about whatever on the red pill table talk. Who was the one that was made to look like a clown? It was Will Smith, right? And then you wonder why men don't really come out and talk about their issues. And you wonder why there's such a high suicidal rate. It's because men get clowned for showing their emotions or they start opening up about some of their issues. And this is why the red pill is a symptom of that problem. There isn't really male spaces out there where men could talk about stuff on the mainstream. Like, you got a whole bunch of female talk shows, but you don't really have many men talk shows. Like in the UK, what is there for women? Not loose women.
But I'll say
right?
this though, Jesse. Sorry to cut you. I'll say this.
Yeah, go on.
And this, I was gonna try to bring it into this. I think a lot of it's because we as men are conditioned to try and react or explain ourselves like a woman. And let me explain. So you made the comparison of there's no loose women for men, there's no this for men. I'm like, well, that's because that's the woman's thing. And I'm not meaning in terms of talking about our issues. I mean how it's done. I think with the attack on masculinity, I think a lot of men don't know how to vent properly. I think a lot of men don't know how to, as a man, explain themselves. And I think that's because, again, there's lots didn't have men in the household. I also think we don't have the outlets that we used to probably have back in the day nowadays, which allows men to be men and vent and do what they need to do in a constructive way, which doesn't come across like a woman. Because a lot of these things I'm seeing in the manosphere, I agree with you. There's no place that men can be vent, but they're doing it in a way which for me is just estrogen based, which is causing them more problems. They're just bitching,
I agree.
complaining, and I think there's something in that where you're right, but it's just the way how it happened. Men do things differently than women would do. That's the other thing I'll say.
I think, right, regarding that, is when you're seeing men like that is another symptom that, is kind of proven with some men who are born in single parent households, is a lack of emotional intelligence, right? If you read a book called The Boy Crisis by a guy called Will Farrell, right? I've got his book. I actually dissected like all the stuff in his book to basically apply to myself regarding some of the issues and see what issues I had because I didn't have a father either. Like he passed away. Well, he left the UK, went to Grenada, and basically passed away at like when I was 23, right? So I had to learn all the developmental stuff by myself, right? Which in some cases I think I did a good job at, but it's like the reason why you're seeing men like that in a more estrogen based way is because of the lack of emotional intelligence. That's what it is. That's why you've got youths out here stabbing each other over petty stuff. Is because of the lack of emotional intelligence. Emotion and testosterone don't mix, right? So that's why you see these type of issues, like you see it on the red pill, and why they're talking in this estrogen based way. Like it's pretty it's pretty flat out and self-explanatory once you read a book like The Boy Crisis. But yeah.
Yeah, I also think emotional intelligence is a big, it's a very big part right now. That's like the one of the things that I see like in more than I see like in more anything. But anyway, thanks for having me, Wim. I gotta get going, but I want to know if I could give a little shout out to my friend Jan Wallace. As a matter of fact, me and her are doing the show today. We're interviewing an Imam Afro Muhammad. He's a civil rights leader. He was a civil rights veteran, and he's a leader of the development of the Black community and the African American community, especially in light of the African American Muslim community, and he's also an interfaith leader. So I put the link to the notifications are up. I put the link in the back, and I put the link to her channel. If anybody could come check us out, and I'll definitely give a shout out to Wim on our show when we on the show when we do it. So again, Jen Wallace, Jenn, Jenn, first name, last name Wallace, Wallis. You can drop the link in the thing for everybody. I really love that event, and I'll definitely be supporting you. So thanks to everybody for having me here today. Thanks a lot.
All right, no worries, bro. Thanks, bro. Right, I'll be back in a sec. Sorry, guys.
Everyone's quiet.
Yeah, still here. Just waiting for white movie. Yeah, do you know what? We might as well carry on. Anyway, yeah. So what I was gonna say next, anyway, because obviously we brought up like relationships and stuff like that. Now, and obviously you're talking about Red Pill. Now, what's interesting, I in my opinion, I find as well is, you know, what a lot of people in that sector complain about is a state of, you know, a lot of females, not every, but a lot of millennial females and even some Gen Zs, right? The sort of OnlyFans culture and fuck culture and stuff like that. What some people don't acknowledge, or maybe it's not brought up enough, is that a lot of that stuff was brought about by the concept of tricking, you know, like paying money for services, etc.
Yeah.
Now I find, no, don't get me wrong, there's people our age that do that stuff, but I find a lot of the time that influence and the people that actually are doing it are the older guys, which is interesting because they're going for millennial women and even younger, right? And not only because they have the whole issue, you know, they even pass that they, you know, when they do try to pass us info, they're like, oh, you know, just pay for it, you know, or, you know, it ain't tricking if you ain't got it, or young boys, and it's like you're saturating the game, you're making it more, because these are the women we have to date, marry, these are the women our age. You're just throwing a couple of trinkets at them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. But
going for their convenience, and then it just saturates our end as well, because they're our women, they're from our generation. Do you know what I mean? We have to deal with them on a normal basis.
Yep. But I'll tell you this. This is gonna sound a bit messed up, but the thing is they ain't actually saturating the market. Let me explain what I mean by that. Most of the
Okay.
information they're bringing out is bullshit. I'm just telling you flat out, it's bullshit. Most of the stuff that these people are saying on the red pill, in most cases, is just full of nonsense, and I'll explain why. Right?
Mhm.
If this red pill knowledge really worked, right, and these people actually applied, right, this so-called red pill knowledge, right? Because remember, I was a former red pillar myself, right?
Mhm.
There wouldn't be so many complaints on social media about the opposite sex. They'll be getting what they want. If red pill knowledge worked so well, there wouldn't be men tricking. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, what if this red pill,
Yeah.
if this
I
red
mean,
pill
I
knowledge
agree with
was
you.
so effective, they
Yeah.
wouldn't need to trick, because you know the red pill, the red pill, the red pill, this red pill, that, right? They would
The thing
be
is,
in a relationship.
I agree. I agree with you, but it's almost no. I agree in a way, but it's almost like they've got the same mentality as some of the older guys. They think it should just be an easy. It like okay, because you get some older guys that complain about the younger men, right? And it reminds me of some people in red pill sector, whatever sector you want to say, incels or whatever the words are, that complain about so-called Pookies, Ray Rays, Chads, and Tyrones. It's like they want to moan, oh, why is it so easy for them? And it's like it's a similar mentality, which is why I say I think it's saturated. Then okay. From what I've seen, there's more older men that would advise you to take the easy route when it comes to women, as in and the easy route is them not really liking you, just paying for their time, attention, and service. Then rather than teaching them things like you say, red pill and game. But I do agree because red pill does leave a lot of things out. For example, let's say like an AMS or something. Yeah, that guy makes me laugh. He's funny. But for all the good real red pill knowledge he gives, this is not just him, but people in general, the information that's given out plus the audience that receiving it, they're not taking into account is they're not 6 foot something like him. They don't look like him. So yeah, I agree. Red pill does leave a lot of details in the middle out.
Right.
But at the same token, I almost feel like there's like people aren't even trying. They're just moaning because some other men got it easier.
All right, cool. I got a counter argument to that. Right?
Okay.
You're saying that some men. This is why I say people need to read this book, Evolution of Desire, right? Because the way this dude breaks things down, he's traveled the world. He's done. That's why you got to just buy the book, right? I'm not an affiliate or anything. Just buy the book. You'll see why most of this red pill stuff is full of shit, right? Because this is based off science and actual evidence of a whole bunch of stuff, right? You know, looking at different cultures all over the world when it comes to women and men and all it's great, right? Now, here's why it's BS, right? Now, when you said about the height, the difference, yeah, I agree. Not all men are basically given the same cards, right? They're all dealt a different set of cards, right?
By the way, I think the height thing's bullshit. By the way, because yeah. But anyway,
What?
go on. I think the height thing's bullshit. I can't stand that height thing. I think it's funny.
Yeah, the height thing's nonsense because let me explain why. Right, is the desire a female and a man, right? Female and men. When it comes to desire of the opposite sex, the desires are multifaceted, right? This is why, for example, if you have one thing lacking, you may have strength in another thing, right? So attraction to like opposite sex or attracted someone is basically multifaceted, right? On both ends, right? So when I hear this is why when I hear these alpha males and all this nonsense, right? It's BS because it is a multifaceted thing. For instance, you can look at many different types of men and all these different types of men of all different shapes and sizes, different intellects, different mindsets even they have some of the hottest women, right? So when you hear this thing, this person's 6 foot and yada yada yada, all this information that they're bringing out is just basically projections, right? And the reason why I mean by projections is that the only two things that I could see really that stands out without most of this red pill talk is basically don't get married, don't have a child out of wedlock, or basically don't get a child, get a woman pregnant, or basically watch out for child support, right? And
What about the red? What about the red pill trope that seems to be an old guy's trope, which is money's the equalizer? That's an old man's talk.
equalizer, money is just one of a desire, is just one desire.
I think it's an old man talk. That's an old tricking man's talk. Like,
right,
because money's not an equalizer, but money makes you more of a target. Do you know what I'm saying? God forbid,
Yeah.
bruv, if I wasn't married, God forbid I was rich, bruv, because I'd never date a woman again, because I wouldn't trust any of them. Like, do you know what I mean?
No, I hear you. I hear you.
But that's an old man's thing. Just give her some money and yeah, of course she's going to take it. It's an old tricking trope. So I really hate when I hear that, because money is no equalizer, bro. Like, you know when they say, "Oh, money makes you handsome," brother. No, it don't. No, it don't, bro. So yeah, I'm just saying that's such an old man's trope. Go.
I just want to bring Kale in because he's been patient. Sorry, it's a good conversation, but I'm going to hope to loop in the conversation because, brother Kale, welcome first and foremost. Hope you're doing very well. The stream is talking about millennials and being entitled, and we're on this red pill sort of thing because millennials are in the red pill. A lot of the millennials are in red pill spaces, and I'm not sure how familiar you are with the red pill spaces, but do you see that as being a detriment to a lot of the psychological effects in terms of how a lot of millennials think or how things are done in that age group because of things like the red pill? I think the red pill has been around in these spaces for 2009, is that 2013? So it's like a long time. It's a long time. So a lot of these millennials have been deep in it. So what do you think, Kale?
Yeah, I do believe that men should have seduction techniques to understand how to seduce women. The problem with these seduction techniques that some of them doesn't really go in detail in regards to like how a woman views time, sex, and relationship. I'll be honest with you, when I was in my younger days, I did research and learn some type of skills because there were certain things I was going through in regards to how to approach women and how to please them as well, especially in my younger days. So I decided to learn certain stuff, and what I found out is that there are 8 types of women. You got a playette, a social butterfly, a hopeful romantic, a Cinderella, a private dancer, a seductress, a connoisseur, and a modern day woman, and they all have a different way of how they would like the man to court them and to make them feel feminine. And I definitely don't know too much about the red pill, but men definitely do need to learn seduction technique, because leading with your money is very disrespectful to the man as well as to the woman. Your money cannot buy you out of pleasing a woman in the bedroom, and definitely cannot all the time help you out to understand the psychological of a female. I think the problem with us men is when we lead with our money, we believe that women are manipulating us. What you've got to understand is that they have to use a technique to be able to guard their sexuality, as it pertains that there are some women that deny their sexual urges, and there are some women who justify their urges due to society basically judging them. So we have to not lead with our money, because there's always a man that's got more money than you, but you definitely need seduction techniques inside the bed and outside the bed. So I totally agree that you do have to learn how to seduce women, definitely.
No, I hear that, and it's funny how you obviously all you guys we're all on the same page here in regards to finances and tricking and how we want to call it. People say it's not tricking if you got it, okay, but it's true, isn't it? It's like we all know about the trope about, or I say that we all do, but the whole high value stuff, and essentially it was a case of, as guys, if you have the finances, that pretty much means you have to pick of the litter, and it's like whoa. That's pretty much setting up a lot of millennials and younger generation, let's be honest, for a world of pain, because you're just a target. So it's just like, by the way, you should make sure you can try and maximize your financial earnings. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, please don't take it the wrong way, but in a context of seducing a woman, that's definitely not that. You're not going to attract the best type of women. Let's just say that you're going to attract the women who they're going to use you like you're going to use them. And then again, we're going to have these self-fulfilling prophecies of women only want this for finance, women only want this hypergamy, this high blah, 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 blah. Well, this is exactly how it happened. So wait. So does that kind of like nullify this whole high value nonsense? Open question.
To be honest with you, there's nothing wrong with being the high value guy. But you need certain skill sets. So for example, right, as what the gentleman was saying, there's a stereotypical that women like men that are 6 foot, right? So as he says beautifully, that not all of us are 6 foot. So what is it that a man who is under 6 foot could do? He has to learn certain mindsets and skills. For example, not all of us, well, as they say, are going to be enlarged down there. So the man's going to need to have a skill set that he can overcome that. So my understanding is that there's 4 types of stereotypes of men: that a guy who is not 6 foot or not enlarged, that he could use these types of characteristics to seduce women. So for example, you've got the businessman who wears a suit. This is very ideal for women. You've got like the urban guy who, the hip hop movement, that is also very seductive. You've got like the rock star type of look, that's very seductive. And you've got certain religious clothing. Now, when I'm saying religious clothing, in the sense that the women will desire these types of stereotypes due to the mindset that they're at. So a guy who's not 6 foot, if he was to capitalize on these stereotypes, and as well as learn the steps, that it's not so much that the high value guy, for example, the celebrities and stuff like that. The things with the high value guy is that he knows how to alert social status. And when you understand female psychology, is that they are very social dominant. So they like to have like a social hierarchy amongst them. So if a guy knows how to be very interesting, having a lot of people that he knows or they know him and etc., he can compete with that social hierarchy that women are very savvy at. So as long as he's got like social skills, and he follows one of those stereotypes, as I says, the business guy with the suit, the hip hop dress code, the religious dress code, or the rock star, and he capitalizes on that and allures social status, he'll be able to be automatically high valued due to him pursuing one of those stereotypes.
No, I hear you. I think it basically comes down to someone said this is almost finding your tribe of women. We're almost, I suppose, if you believe in soulmates, I don't kind of believe in soulmates, but certain women respond to different things, and it's just knowing which woman or type of women responds to, I suppose, what energy you're putting out there. And sometimes it's a case of you may want a woman who's not going to reciprocate the energy that you are. Again, it's maybe the rock star, it may be the suit wearing, it may be the whatever trope it is. But a lot of times it's to do with that. I got a question then, because a lot of times, and this is where the other side comes to place, the women's side now, because when men have game, women have their games. And this is what I was going to say, because I said, use the word game. And this is where a lot of us probably as millennials, well, let me ask the question first. Do you see these games as being more of a hindrance? Because if you look at old generations, how I see it, for example, and I know this will never happen, but I've heard stories of like parents, even older generation, where they'll be courting for 3 months, then married for 30 plus years. Whereas now, 3 months, you're still in there. We don't know what phase it is yet. You see what I'm saying? So all these things we call games, have this been a detriment to us as a development, as young people, as millennial people? Because with these game seduction techniques, a lot of these things, let's be honest, the games, and it's just a way of getting what we want from each other, and it doesn't seem to lead to honesty and trust. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
I don't know if the gentlemen on the go, or are they all right? Does anyone want to answer that? Or
KB, Jesse, open question.
What's the question again?
Sorry, I was just saying, do you see these techniques, games we kind of call them, do you see that as more of a game which doesn't lead to healthy relationships, or is it necessary? Because again, I was using the comparison, old generations, they'll get together for 3 months. They'll be married in 3 months' time, 6 months' time. They're legitimate. We will be like 20 plus years. Whereas us, these games
Yeah.
play 6 months plus.
I think these gimmicks like the red pill for relationships are unsustainable and is not basically helpful, right? Because again, if you look back at how you've got all these red pillars talking about this and that and whatever, they're not in long-term healthy relationships. They're not married, right? They don't have any wives, they don't have any families. That's what I've noticed by some of these red pillars. If you know these red pillars, they all single. Most of them are single. They don't have any family that they could build with, right? So that's a red flag in itself, right? Also, from someone who used to be a red pillar, right, and have applied these techniques in a relationship, it is very mentally challenging and very mentally fatiguing, because basically you have to keep up a facade for almost forever until the relationship basically ends, or for the rest of your life. It's not healthy, right? And I'm seeing someone is saying that red pillars came from white people. Like the red pill came from the Matrix and someone adopted it. We don't even know who truly created the red pill. Like we don't even know who created the red pill. So
I think
Like, who created it?
conventional thought maybe like Rollo Tomasi and them kind of people, but other
Right,
people
but we
say
don't
red
know
pills,
exactly
barber
who.
shops. In terms of this space, I would say it's mostly credited with white people. But then again, it was a time where there was no white and black space. It was just one space. So I
Right.
don't know.
And also MGTOW was created, well, that's the rumor, that it was created by a black man called Stardust. So
Okay.
I don't, you see what I'm saying? I don't know. Like, this is why I don't really, it's not really about race. If the red pill's created by a white person, so what? Do you know what I mean? It's not really made by like race, because I'm seeing it in the comments and I'm just trying to prove a point. Like everyone like, I don't really see it beneficial to anyone. That's just how I see the red pill. There's only 3 or 4 things that I could say, yeah, what are helpful is don't get a chick pregnant when you're not financially secure because of the child support system, right? Watch out for the dangers of marriage, right? And various other pitfalls. Well, yeah, but in a way that's common sense. Do you know what I mean? Like a lot of the stuff that they're saying is just common sense. Like don't get a woman pregnant when you're not ready. Like don't get married when you're not ready, or look for the pitfalls. It's like most of it is common sense. And it's not healthy because you're not really being your true authentic self, and then you basically have to keep that facade until how long the relationship lasts, and it's not sustainable, right? It's like, oh, you've got to stay in your masculine frame, and you got to be this alpha man, bro. It's not sustainable, bro. And this is why in the way it's not sustainable is half of these people that are spilling this red pill stuff are not in relationships. They're not in happy relationships, like healthy long-term relationships.
No, it's true. And funny enough, actually, in KB, I don't know if you're here. I wanted to ask you a question as well. Feel free not to answer it, but is there any pressure on you, obviously being a millennial, to I suppose to be, what's them call it, to show a healthy relationship? I know you're married, so you big up to yourself. You got a young child as well. Do you feel any pressure being a millennial to try and almost halt the slide, if that makes any sense, in terms of a committed relationship?
In a way, yes, but it's a pressure I welcome. Because you know what? Funny enough, and we're talking about the generations. What's interesting, right, is when me and my wife was getting married, this is just a side note, but the people that seemed to be most happy for us were millennials and younger. It was the older people that were actually questioning. Like,
Oh,
yeah,
wow,
but
really?
like you guys been together, yeah, you guys have been together for a long time. What's the point in getting married? Or if they didn't question it, again, it's that age group. They had that sort of mentality, like, yeah, you two should get married. That so you can, not even in a you should get married because, oh, it's a good thing, you two love each other, you're like in an it's about time good way. It's like, oh, you can put, um you get your advantage, you get the certain advantage to being a Mr. and Mrs. And they was looking at it from a whole different type of angle. So it's quite interesting. Pressure, definitely yes, because but not so much because of our generation. I mean, uh, there isn't much examples in our generation to go on. I am definitely one of the few people I know that are married, um, especially males. But more people our age were like, "Oh wow, you two are getting married. Oh, that's really good." People was more impressed by it. Um, and if I felt more pressure, it's because the older lot it's when I thought about it, it's quite shameful actually, because quite a few of the older lot, especially for example our wedding, I remember thinking this, and I was thinking like, there's bare older people here, and most of you lot ain't married. Most of you lot ain't married. Like,
Oh,
I'm
wow.
actually impressing myself. Where did I get this influence from? Like, do you know what I mean? My missus,
Fact.
same way. She's got a big family. Her mom and dad are married, but none of her siblings are. And there's kids, baby fathers, baby daddies. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, this is why I always attribute a lot of the stuff to the older generations, because, and you're talking about marriage, even those that did get married very quickly, 3 months, 6 months, like you guys were saying, um, just because they were married and they might have stayed together for like 40 years or something, in one aspect, I almost feel like it's not any better than us millennials rejecting marriage for males or females, because if we're going to be honest, or if those older generations are going to be honest, a lot of those marriages were miserable. They were miserable.
That's a very good
I
point
think
you raised.
that goes into what White Matters was saying, because you were saying something to do with how is the game? Do you have to make it? Do you have to game, and is it manipulative? And the thing is, brother, like myself, I am married as well. I've been like married for over like 20 years now, and before
Congratulations.
that, say again, brother.
So I said congrats. That's a nice
Yeah,
number.
yeah, I appreciate that. But at the same time, like to answer your question, brother, you do need to keep things interesting, because men and women, they're very mysterious in regards to their worlds. And when it comes to women, they are very logical in their gender, and you have to keep things very interesting for yourself and them, because for example, you've got some women that test due to the clock what they have. They've got a clock when it comes to procreating and having a baby. So some women will test to see what you like long term, or some women will invest shortly due to the fact of the clock that I have. Some women, as I said, will deny their sexual urges or justify due to society's pressure on them. And some women are very idealistic in relationships or realistic due to their upbringing. So you have to keep things very interesting. And in order to do that, even if you're married, like I'm married myself, and I have to keep things interesting. You have to do it because
Mm.
boredom and that everyday same thing going on can put a strain on the relationship. So you do have to game Brother White Matters. You do have to have strategies, man. I won't say it's manipulative. It's more influencing the relationship to be better. You do have to learn things in the bedroom. A lot of us men are very ignorant towards that. Orgasms mean a lot to women. You have to learn how to please a woman properly, whether it be massaging, whether it be all types of techniques to help them reach those types of orgasms. You have to know how to seduce outside the bedroom. Not all women want you to take them to restaurants. Some women prefer the game shops, believe it or not, the arcade shops. Some of them prefer, different types of things. You know what I mean? You have to learn these things because they are very intriguing creation, and they're in different types. And if you think taking them to a restaurant, that type of woman may not want that. So what you're doing is you've been anti-seductive, and it may mess up the whole flow. You have to find out, what does a tester like to do when you take her out, and you have to, for an investor, you have to find out. So definitely, bro, some will call it manipulative, but you need a game in order to bring the best out in a marriage relationship.
Do you know what it is? And I think I agree with you, but I think it's the word game. I think I would use like romance. You see what I mean? I think it's just a word I don't like. but I get exactly what you're saying, and I agree with you. I think it's just a word. When everyone says a game, that to me it just seems manipulative. But I get what you're saying. For me, it's more of your romance and how you keep things interested. I don't know. If it's people say it's just a word, it's just a, but sometimes I think it does mean a hell of a lot different things. To be fair, I was going to say something and I completely forgot. KB, did you want to say something? Why I get
Yeah, I was just going to go on the back of what Kyle said. Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree. And again, I was thinking about the older marriages, and what they don't pass on is just like you said. I agree. You've got to keep everything fresh going on both the husband and wife side. And it's mad because, and you know what? Fiona's going to call me an empath again, but I may sometimes I do talk a bit harsh, but I do feel sorry for a lot of our generation's women as well, because they're almost stuck in a weird place, right? Because just like you described, Kel, they want love, affection. You know, it's a natural thing to want, especially, you know, from a female's point of view. They're highly emotion based, etc. And also because a lot of, let's say, their mums, yes, they was in the home and they were housewives and kept, but they wasn't. A lot of their mothers weren't loved, and they saw that. So I agree. In terms of our generation, we do have to do more, and the women are more vocal and they more want to be appreciated. Why I say I feel sorry for them as well, because they're just like us, they're stuck in this weird place as well, because they also saw their mums be housewives, which places and people like the older men and some of the things like red pill also promote to the younger guys. So it's like it's like we're a mix of two different things in one go, but life isn't the same as back then. And just like you said, we have to continue whining and dining. And like you said, restaurants, do you know what, the whole concept, I know people like restaurants, but I don't think it's that much of a millennial thing. Like, I agree. I find millennial women will want to do more fun things, if that makes sense, more actual activities, actually want to do stuff rather than just being, even the restaurant thing. Yes, it is nice. And yes, I still do it. But it's to me, it feels like, again, that whole
cliche.
old school tricking concept, you know. Yeah, wine and dine. You just mentioned romance, why it matters. What's the old tricking phrase? Oh, there's no romance without finance. So even then, they wasn't loving them. Do you know what I mean?
I get it, but it depends how you work it. But I hear what you're saying. But because
they wasn't loving their women. Do you know what I mean? They was just, okay, here you go. This was the answer. Like, you know, money, your house you provide, here you go. Be a kept wife, sit there, be pretty, shut up. Which you might hear some women scream, okay, I'd love that. But at the same time, they don't. You can tell they don't, because they complain about the way some men treat them. So it's different. You know, the women of nowadays aren't going to be like our mums, just going to sit there and shut up for 20 years while our dad's having 2-3 fucking kids on her. Do you know what I mean?
Facts.
But again, where it's difficult is because depending on how the woman's situation turned out, and in some cases she might have ended up a ex-wife or a single mum, then depending on the narrative that's been based, then you may get a millennial woman that's like, well, you was nothing like how the men used to be, or you guys have been used since my mum's generation. So it's I feel sorry for the women as well. And then you've got other influences as well. I feel sorry for our generation in general, to be honest. But
absolutely, and there's a massive war between that, because I always like, oh, this is the conflicting thing you always hear about women saying they want men to be traditional, but they want to be modern, and then the other way around, where men are saying we want women to do this, but we don't want to provide the same way as that. It's always, there's a massive conflict, not just socially, but again, well, I suppose it is social conflict that exists within the genders, where, truth be told, we're just not putting up with the things that both of us aren't in equal fashion. What we believe our parents' generation had to deal with. Not dealing with disrespect, man. I'm not, or the woman's like, I'm not dealing with disrespect to women. I'm not sitting here having all of these kids while you're swanning off with other women and me being left out, you know, anything. It's that conflict, isn't it?
I think a lot of the time as well, what us men do very wrong, and I'm going to be honest, because as I said, it for the betterment of the African family. Why it matters knows where I'm coming from with this is that we don't give women the opportunity to be partners in all things. So, for example, this is very controversial, by the way, but sometimes there's nothing wrong with allowing a woman to go halves on a dinner, or go halves, you know, in the house, you know, making sure that they can be compliant to the relationship. a lot of us men, particularly, I know I'm, you know, in my 40s or whatever, I notice the older generation, and even kind of now, they don't give women the opportunity to be useful to their nature. You know, women want to support you on your path. So giving them the opportunity, sometimes, you know, allowing them to go halves with a compliant task. You know what I mean? Always allow them to be halves in everything and not treat them as though they are some trophy. Because if you're always kind of having them as a trophy, what you're doing is you're allowing them to go and focus on other guys. Whereas you've got to keep them invested into the relationship. Okay, he wants me to you know, be halves in a relationship. You know, he allows me to pay half for a dinner, or he allows me to contribute this to the relationship in an emotional way, in a sexual way, or a practical way. You have to always keep them invested in the relationship, or they will feel unuseful. And we have to really teach the millennials these things, that you have to make women compliant in all things, if that makes any sense.
Do you know what's interesting also, right? It does make a lot of sense. Is and I know some millennial men complain about this. I have done in the past, but not too tough, to be honest. A, a lot of the older millennial black women, I still no, you know what? Not just black women, sorry, all women actually, but particularly the older generation. But yeah, we're talking about black people in a way. I feel like as well, some of the traits that would help them become a better supportive person, just like you were describing, they haven't passed that on. Even that whole mentality, I don't feel like that's been passed on the main. It sometimes amazes me the amount of even millennial women I've come across that can't cook. Now, I'm not saying that on a as a slight to them. I'm saying that in a surprising way, because I can almost guarantee all their mothers can. So what happened? Do you know what I'm trying to? Do you know what I'm trying to say? And it is part of of um of maintaining their household in terms of, as you said, the whole supportive aspect. You know, if times are different now. So a supportive aspect, maybe your partner runs a business and you run the admin security part of it. That hasn't been sort of passed down. There is in some cases I have seen with millennials, to be fair, and why I still hold hope is that a lot of us, for example, in the supporting aspect, i.e., like when they're going to buy a house, I have seen where both people are happily, you know, working in their careers to contribute to one goal. I have seen that a lot of millennials, or a few times with millennials, to be fair. But yeah, I think a lot of it wasn't passed down, because to me, millennials, we might as well. I think a lot of us might as well discount. I think you said it earlier. What it matters between 5 to 7 to 10 years of our lives. I feel like with a lot of us, there's at least this 5-year period where it was kind of like the abyss. I find with most people at some point in their life.
Oh, 100%.
And then we've got this past trauma going back as well, because I feel like we're taking on other people's stuff, but it's almost like we wasn't even warned. It was just take it on and deal with it. And then it's like, oh, you know, I've had arguments with older people, or even, you know, even being in Britain, oh, we're not, you know, we was literally having to fight the police on the road, and you could, you know, you could walk down the road and you could see two police battering a black boy, and you couldn't say that, and otherwise it's like, okay, I get that, but it doesn't mean everything's hunky-dory, because I point them to the fact of, okay, well, yeah, circumstances. Let me go to 2011 then. We got Mark Duggan, who got killed on his doorstep, and then we went to having a riot. So things haven't changed that much. It's just maybe that we're just not having it as much. I don't know. But they try to do this whole "it's easier now" thing. It's different, but in some cases, I think it's a lot easier then. I think it's hard. I think it's much harder now. I think it's much harder now.
Funny enough, you know, you mentioned a good point about like the abyss, and a lot of it is because, do you know what? Here's my belief. I think if life has fewer choices, your life is easier to navigate, because you only have really two choices: do this or do that. Whereas with our generation, because of everything that's gone on, like gender roles we're talking about right now, gender roles is not what it used to be. Therefore, it's confusing. So because it's so confusing, because you've got different generations that you should be doing this as a man, you should be doing this as a woman, but we're like, hold on, no, we want to redefine the gender roles. It's getting to a stage now where we're redefining the whole pronouns. Obviously, so I fear for the younger generation. But a lot of it is because we're trying to figure out a new life, a new world. And right now, it's just we're just having a harder time because it's most people I speak to, millennials, they will be more accepting to have a child with a woman or a man than to get married. And I'm like, man, we completely redefine what normal is because we'd rather buy a house with our partners, not married, have a child with our partners, not married, do all these big things where, let's be honest, a house is an asset which we guarantee if you split up, someone's gonna be fighting over it. A child is a huge responsibility. Something happens, we know what's gonna happen. So there's so many things where at least a marriage with no kids, you can pretty much divorce and maybe leave yourself intact. With everything else, a whole different ballgame. So we're really redefining what it is to be, I suppose, our gender identity, what's acceptable, what's the process, what should we be doing, which is causing a lot of problems.
I think as well, brother White matters, and this is more directly for our community, but I suppose it can be applied to the rest due to your audiences, is that there's an African proverb is that it takes a village to raise a child. And as for the millennials, or even before that, they have a problem with the marriage thing, is that due to circumstances, unfortunately, women, they have to be very, very careful what type of archetype they have as a husband, because the community really does need to get on board with this white matters, you know. So the woman is secured with generational wealth, as well as if that man gets out of line or she gets out of line, that there's an uncle, a brother, or even a non-family member that is part of the community that can be an arbiter for them to secure this generational wealth. Because this having, you know, kids out of wedlock is very, very dangerous for women in general, but as it pertains to the African woman, due to our plight, what's upon us. So the community needs to get involved with that to make sure there's stability for us. So if the relationship breaks down, that generational wealth is passed down, not just 2 generations, but at least 10. And she doesn't really need to rely on the system as much. You know, the community needs to get involved, man, when it comes to the you know, marriage, you know, kids without wedlock, so to say.
So let me ask you this in Kale then, because you said that the community needs to get involved then. So in the case of, and I believe I've heard you say this before, but let it just refresh my memory. In the case of when a situation, you've 2 people have got together, they've had a kid and not married, in terms of the community stepping in to secure that generational wealth, are you suggesting the community say you must get married? Is that how I understand it? Because that's the only way to secure it, I assume.
Most definitely, brother. Most definitely.
Interesting. Now, a lot of people are pig-headed. And this is probably the problem with a lot of community things. If that does not take place, and I suppose this is the question. I suppose we have to bring back shame. I think this is probably one of the things which, let me ask the open question then. Do we need to bring back shame back to our communities?
Most definitely. Very interesting you saying that, because one of the things when it comes to our community, and that there's no order marks or disciplinary for our unethical code of conduct amongst one another. If you look into other communities, I'll give you an example. The mafia, for example. Now, people may say, oh, it's bad and etc. But there's one thing I noticed with them is that they have a code of conduct amongst the Italian people. If you are of a not Italian blood, so to say, you can be part of that community or that organization, but you cannot lead. If you are fornicating while you are in that organization, it's bad for business. They don't tolerate those things because it, in other words, it destabilizes the generational wealth. So we do need to shame people from our community who are having kids out of wedlock, and especially not passing down generational wealth. There needs to be a declaration, brother White matters, because I don't mind that we should learn seduction techniques. I do believe women, especially the African woman, she should get her pleasures inside the bedroom and outside the bed. I don't disagree with that, but at the same time, to secure her from going to the system and relying on benefits and all these types of curriculums, we need to have our own type of government in regards to principles of code of conduct. So if she is in certain situation, the community can help her So, but yeah, shame needs to be put onto us when we break the code of conduct.
No, I definitely do hear, and thanks Jesse for coming onto the panel, and KB if you need to dash, no problem. Thanks for adding your input. It's been brilliant, both of you as always. So no worries at all. Hope you have a good evening. Everything's all good. But Kale, you raised a good point, and this is kind of where I suppose we going forward need to really get a code of conduct. And Fiona, I've seen the message, and I suppose in terms of shame, it's a shame on both, isn't it? Because again, with the whole, if you have a child out of wedlock and you get married, that's both the male's responsibility and the female's responsibility to, well, especially on the man, because the man's gonna have to wed that woman to make sure that, guess what, you guys are now taking care of business, you guys are raising the family, you guys are doing all that needs to be done. So in terms of who needs to be shamed, for sure, it's on both parties. That's how I've always seen it. Now, I'm going to say this, and to be real, women will get shamed more because they're the ones who carry the child. They're the ones who normally will carry the brunt of the shame. That's just how it normally is, because a man can get away with it because he doesn't carry children. A woman cannot. A woman cannot. So I don't want to say anything like that.
What I was referring to shame, and this is going to be very obtuse, so I hope you can understand where I'm coming from, is that shame in the sense that when it comes to their assets that they have, that should be controlled by the community. So, for example, their wealth, what they have, right, it goes on the bills, etc. But when it comes to their desirable or pleasurable of using the money, the community should be controlling that, due to the fact that you have had kids out of wedlock, and it's very detrimental to the child. If anything was to happen, the child won't receive anything, because people seem to forget, right, that when you are in a relationship that's not based on marriage, right, and I want my the female audience to understand is that the man does not have to claim that child, let alone provide. This is the reason why you have marriage, whether it be the the African spiritual traditional way of marriage, or from the Abrahamic faith. There's a reason why, and a lot of us don't realize that the F word means fornication under the commission of the crown. That's what FUCK means. So it's very important that women, as it pertains to the African, understands that he doesn't really have to provide or claim the child. And this is very hurtful, because if we're here to preserve and uplift our community, and I don't wish that on any other women from not from our community, of course, but the African women needs to understand that marriage is an extension for the community to help out. So they should be shamed with control of their assets. Social status should definitely be going down, and also definitely disciplinary conducts, brother. I know it may seem extreme, but one thing we need to understand is that in every community, brother, there are rules, and there are order marks if you go against those rules. All due respect to you, brother.
No, I hear you, and I want to play devil's advocate a second, because, and this is, I think, the reason why the older generation, reason why we're not doing it as our old generation did, is because you get married to a woman, or a woman gets married to a man that, truth be told, they don't even like, even though they've had a kid. So now you're putting two people together who, truth be told, don't really like each other as a long-term commitment. And the question is it going to be more detrimental to the child being in a situation, a household where the mother and father are likely going to be bickering and arguing? And let's be honest, here's what's going to be bust back, especially from the man's side. I only married you because you had a child. I didn't actually love you. So my question is this: is there a detriment where we're going to have the same situation where we've had, basically, it's not a happy relationship, it's not a happy marriage at all, it's a marriage only in paper only?
You mind if I jump in and answer?
Sure, and also I'll let Kale come in, but yeah, go ahead, Mr. Paley.
Yeah, only because I don't have that much time. Anyway, that's a great question, and I understand everything Kale said. There does need to be shame. There does need to be all these stuff. And would it be sort of biased against women? Of course it will, but that's kind of always been the case. Like we have to make ladiness a premium, and it has to be a thing of class. And and about the thing you said about if they're not really loving each other, just got married for the child. Well, that happened all the time. I mean, we have to sort of divorce love and marriage in a certain sense, because we got to know that people are going to have to learn to love each other. Sometimes it's like, because marriage is more about community building and building society more than it's about love. And the fact that now we have this culture of romance and love, and not about organization and community building. It has been a detriment. Like the thing, back then, you had boundaries. Like you could love, but you have to love within boundaries. And sometimes, and sometimes you're stuck with boundaries, and you have to love. You having to love somebody. That's just life. We have to understand that as human beings, we're not unlimited in our capacities, and we have to set our cultures and our ways of life according to the best outcomes of the whole community and human nature at all, and whole human nature at large. Even if it goes against our personal desires and feelings temporarily, we have to be accountable to the bigger picture and the big society that we all live under, because we don't live in the bush by ourselves. We live in a community, so we have to be social creatures, and part of that is taking things that don't always go your way and making the most out of life, and turning lemons into lemonade, for lack of a better word. So that's my stance on that. Thank you very much.
No, I hear all that. I hear all that, and conceptually, it sounds good. Well, I don't know how long you can stay, Mr. Paley, but let me just ask this: could you do that yourself? Could you sleep with a woman, get her pregnant, you don't really like her, and then you marry her? Could you see yourself doing that?
I've been in those situations before, and I was doing, and that was my plan. I've been in those situations, but unfortunately, the baby in question, it died as stillborn. We had a stillborn, right? But it's been in situations where, yes, I felt compelled to stay with the woman. Like if I do it, I personally would feel compelled to do it, right? Like recently, my best friend, that happened to him about a year ago. It's exactly a year. The baby's a year now. Yeah, yep, it's a year ago, and he's still with her, and he wasn't with her before, but they had the baby. So that, of course, I'm not saying that he don't like her. He liked her and all, but the baby made them move in together, and stay together. And I don't know if they're ever going to get married yet, but for now they're making it work. You know what I'm saying? Even though they weren't together for long before the pregnancy happened, but he took responsibility for the pregnancy. So yeah, it's not. Relationships and marriage cannot be. We have to make the responsibility the number one factor before even love. That's what marriage is about to me, and we kind of have to have that, and we have to like live with it. I know it sounds difficult in this day and age, but that's why we had all these spiritual systems back in the day, because sometimes we have to appeal to a higher power to guide us through things, and live outside of our own petty egos, and live for a higher purpose. So if we don't have a higher purpose in our lives that's compelling us to do things that we might not like for our own personal selves, we're always going to be disadvantaged, because we're always going to be stuck in our own world of self egotistical vanity, and that's what we have to get out of. Thank you.
No,
And I agree with what he says there, Brother White Matters, because if you look at in ancient times in Africa and stuff like that, right, is that marriage was about passing down the generational wealth, or marrying a woman from a different African tribe that would bring unity of the tribe, or, for example, securing certain borders with that tribe, so none African invaders won't invade it. He's right, and this is the whole point of it, that I do believe you need seduction techniques to understand the woman and to please them. At the same time, marriage is about securing the generational wealth, not so much based on love. I think we've been manipulated by Walt Disney and etc. Because the other communities and that, right? Do you think that they are madly in love with one another? No, they're not. They also have a code of conduct that I'm with you to keep the community flowing. We must have that mindset as how we used to have in African time, but at the same time have seducing techniques to bring the best out in that marriage. But it should be based upon the unity of the community marriage more than it should be based upon love, which love comes and goes every second, every minute.
No, I hear that, and I think because it's such an individualist society, it's very hard for that, because this is more about the collective and almost what's best, and marriage is more of a practical tool. And I know you mentioned about marriage is used to secure the finances, and that's very true. And a lot of times, I suppose, in the beforehand, I think marriage used to be it used to be only for the elites, the aristocrats, because they wanted to secure. If they went to war, they'd get married with the French. The Brits and the French would get married just so it would secure peace. And a lot of times it'd be there as to secure assets, peace, and obviously treaties and stuff like that. So a lot of times I do agree, past way back, that marriage seemed to be for the elites, whereas the poor peasants, love was the thing. They used to get married in these weird ceremonies, and it wasn't never the same way. But no, it's very practical. I suppose the question is, can we actually achieve it in this type of society? Because one thing I was going to mention is, and what's been mentioned in the chat, is we have certain laws in place which a lot of guys, I mean, this is what it is. They fear marriage because of the possibility of the woman can actually ask for divorce. So there is that fear there where even though you try your best to make sure it works out, it's just not. And there's that fear of losing all your assets. So all that wealth that you want to accrue, that's likely to get spilled out in the streets, which is never great. So yeah, that's combat.
Well, here's the thing, brother. You can't force people to be in a marriage with you. Well, as what you and I and brother Pilu just mentioned, is that as long as you're securing the generational wealth, that is the marriage. You know, you cannot force someone to be with you. You can try, but the focus is securing that generational wealth. And the African man, the African woman, as I'm speaking specifically for them, needs to understand their reality and stuff. Right. First of all, our community, unfortunately, have abandoned the code of conduct. So our situation, we cannot afford to be bugs pointed out a situation and acting like we have security and economics. So the fear of detriment of the next generation and also failure of not securing generation should be top of the list of our mindset, not in an anxiety way that we can't function, but it should be a template of reaching that goal of failure must not be an option when it comes to generational wealth, or our youth will come for us, and it's happening now, unfortunately. They will come and take us out, whether it be guns or knives. And then if the youth start doing that to the elders, which unfortunately is happening, then, you know, who else is going to sort out the African family? So we do have to take it very seriously that if the marriage doesn't work out, you still have to pass down generational wealth.
No, I definitely hear that. And but yeah, there's one last question before I sort of wrap this up, because I'm conscious we've been going for a long time at all. And I suppose the last thing is, I suppose, on the realms of community, and I just want to get both your thoughts on sort of the state of community in a lot of, I'm talking about millennials this stream, in our lives, because you mentioned it, Kale, it takes a community or a village to raise a child. Now the question is, because I'm hearing a lot of things where a lot of parents feel isolated and alone, does a lot of our elders have to take some responsibility? Because the communities, for me, this is how I see it, how I feel. I could be wrong. You may have a different opinion. Let me know. We haven't got a community there to look out for us, for the sustainability of us at the moment. It's almost like we have to start it back up again. There's not like a strong community there that helps us out in the same way as our older generation did. What are your thoughts to that?
Does the brother want to go first, or is he?
Yes, yeah, okay. Yes. I'll answer the question first. I take the first shot at it. I think it is definitely a problem from the last generation. It's definitely the case, but at the same time, we know that's the case, right? Is our job to recognize that that's the cards that we were given. We have to first recognize that yes, the cards are given, but that should be our motivation to make the changes, because we can't control what they do. Unfortunately, we simply cannot control them. We could the best we could do is rise above the nonsense that they pass down and shame them by our success. That's the only thing we can do, is shame them by our success. So yes, that's definitely the case, and that's more reason we should shame them by our success, and let the truth be known about the situations we live and what we go through it. Because the reason why the truth has to be known about it, so we could immunize the people coming after us against the harms of lack of generational cultural prioritization of transmission of practical knowledge for people to live. Thank you very much.
No, I hear that, and I like that. I like that phrase you shame them with success. I like that. So no, I hear you there. I hear you, man. And yeah, I agree. We do have to, if we want to reverse the trend, we have to be the change. A lot of time we complain about, you know what, we need single mother households, or out of wedlock is the reason why this is the case. Well, what's the remedy? Get married, don't have kids out of wedlock, or if you can't do that, don't have kids. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's another story. Sorry, Kale, your thoughts on that question?
Yeah, the elders, they do need to take responsibility. The problem with the elders, Brother White Matters, is that they've reached a level that, and this is pertains to those in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, I'll say 40s, 50s, 60s. They've reached a level where the juice of organizing has left them. And they have, unfortunately, a very selfish mindset of, because we didn't succeed, we shouldn't allow the next generation to, which is why a lot of black psychiatrists have made it clear that you have to focus on those youths who haven't reached 30 yet, because you can change and influence the mind. When you get to like 30, 40, 50, brother, unfortunately, once your mind is made up, it's very difficult to get them on a certain particular criteria of code for our people. So as long as you are, and it returns back to what Brother Raven with the Black Betterment, is a political scientific strategy. And these things are going to help and to prevent these things of, broken marriages and the community not there. There's blueprints, brother, and as I always say, man, like, Garveyism, Pan-Africanism, or whatever type of organization that has code of conduct needs to be implemented more than idealism. That is the way forward in order to govern a community based upon principles, codes of conduct, good or bad, harsh or light. Code of conduct needs to be implemented for the better of the next generation.
No, definitely true. And yeah, it's going to be a hard slog, I think. But you're right. I think we have to look long term. I think one things that we're probably not as good at doing, and we're all guilty of this because we care about our short term, is look at long term in terms of way down the line, where 70 years, 100 years in the future, what would the blueprint of the community look like? And all these things start now, and it's interesting how things can definitely evolve or devolve, I suppose, if we don't have a code, or at least try and stick to the code. So 100%. But no, thank you both very, very much for your contribution. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thanks for Jesse and KB, who was on beforehand. I'm going to sort of shut down the stream, but no, it's been a fantastic conversation, and it's been great. Please make sure that you do like the stream, share the stream, subscribe if you are new and you've been listening on the playback. It's been a wonderful conversation. Kale, I need to have that conversation with you about that other stream about mental health, and I will do it, hoping this week sometime. I promise. That's going to be a fire stream.
Yeah.
So make sure people.
Thanks for having me, bro. Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
As always. Sorry, Mr. Pelly.
Yeah. Hey, you want if I give one one last shameless plug? I'm gonna give one last shameless plug. I'm doing a show today with my friend Jen Wallace. We have a special guest, Imam Afro Muhammad. He's a civil rights veteran and an interfaith leader, and was instrumental in the development of the Black American Muslim community. And he's also going to be talking about a case he's working on with 2 African American men who have been in prison in Ecuador on Trump charges, and we're trying to get them out. So we're going to have a good talk. Is that Jen Wallace? Is that Jen Wallace? That's JENN. Last name Wallace, WALLIS for page. So, and I put it in the back chat. So, Kale, if you could, why matters. If you can send it back out, thank you. It's later on today. It's 9:30 U.S. time EST. I don't know what time that is in Britain, but anyway, check us out if you can. Thank you.
No worries. And no, it definitely sounds like an interesting conversation. So if I can't catch it live, because it might be, I don't know, 12:30, 1:30 our time, but if not, I'll definitely catch on the playback, because no, it definitely does sound like an interesting stream. So yeah, people, if you listen to the playback in the comment section listening now, for sure, definitely check out that stream if you are available to live, but definitely catch on the playback. And so yeah, definitely thanks for that. I'll put the link in the chat. So let me just put it in one more time, just so it's there on the playback as well as when I'm speaking about it. But no, all the links are there. So by all means, please check it out if you can and when you can, for sure. But no, thanks everyone for coming. Thanks people for tuning in. Yep, thanks Fiona. Please make sure that you do like the video, share, subscribe if you are new. But no, definitely keep watching out for the next one. Hopefully you're gonna have another fire conversation like it was today. So again, appreciate everyone for coming in. And yeah, end of stream. Have a good night, everyone, and we're out of here.